Okay, this is The Edges in Your Mind by Chief Crow and the Flat Earth Worms. Find all the music you hear at Infinite Plane Radio at infiniteplanesociety.com. That's the portal to everything. Phones are open, 833-311-1984, and they're always open. We have voicemail, so if you're not able to catch us live, just leave a message and we will play it live, so your message will get out. This one, I think this is from, let's see. Okay, here we go. This is the first of several voicemails, and feel free to call in. Numbers on the screen.
Hey, Tim, I was listening to your space cannabis episode. I was wanting to just drop one thing about the Great Reset. I think they're pulling from the power of the conjunction on December 21st, since they're into astrology. So I was wanting to kind of see if you could go in that direction and, explore that, as they're pulling from the power of that massive conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter. That's all I had, man. Appreciate it. Keep up the good work.
I've heard a few things. I've heard a few things about this conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter, and this would be on December the 21st. I've heard it compared to the one that happened during JFK's assassination. So, yeah, we can talk about that. And he referenced the space cannabis episode, and actually it was space cannibalism, not space cannabis. Actually, there will be both. If you look at the actual plans for the Mars bases, there'll be plenty of both. Okay, let me get on to the next message. And yeah, we'll definitely go into this Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. I've found some interesting material related to that. Okay, the next one here.
Hey, Tim. I'd just like to have a little question for you. So there's this thing that's going around. I mean, it's related to what's right now, but this is the Glober's version. So this is called Coriolis virus. This is something I actually checked out on Nathan Oakley's channel on his 1293 Live.
Okay, so he's mentioning Nathan Oakley channels, and he said the Coriolis virus.
And it's kind of humorous in a sense, because this would mostly correlate to the reference frame in the globe and how Globers just manage to flop entirely on their model. And they have this cognitive dissonance where supposedly the reference frame doesn't exist.
Oh, so I know where he's going with this. He's talking about the cognitive dissonance of the ball earthers. And there's a fallacious nature here to this debate when it comes to the flat earth versus ball earth debate. And it's mainly this. You have the ball addicts, the globe addicts, are just furious with the whole flat earth theory, and they spend all their time attacking this straw man. It's a straw man argument, because there isn't a flat earth model. There just isn't one. It's incomplete. There's a bunch of question marks. That's why they hate it so much. It requires exploration. So nobody knows what the flat earth model is, if there is one, if it is. I mean, for all we know, it could be biblical. It could be a big footstool with a dome on top. It could be a pizza disc on top of 4 elephants' backs who are astride a tortoise, with other tortoises beneath that one all the way down. So there is no flat earth model. I think the debate's a waste of time. The only debate is globe or no globe. And globe lost. There still needs to be some more evidence before we can go with the globe model. And by the way, I've been looking at the ISS videos again. The other day I was trying to go to sleep, actually, and I wanted to be bored, so I turned on the ISS live stream, very calming ambient music, and I caught it again, shadows. The space station has a shadow, and it shouldn't. It's way too high. Way too high. And it's obviously CGI, and they have to deal with it. It's not a smudge. Last time I brought this up, and I had a debate with Fight the Flat Earth and Red's Rhetoric, 2 well-known NASA plants, and they said, oh, it's a smudge. It's not a shadow, it's a smudge. Wait, it's a smudge, but I see it in multiple takes. Well, that was a year ago. So they've had a year to wipe the lens on the ISS. There's no reason for there to still be a smudge. All right, I'm going to continue here just a moment. And I have been getting back into this conversation because they're just getting way ahead of themselves. The space cult with their CGI, I call them out live all the time, and I don't know if this is because of us, but one of the senior directors of NASA now has a big stuffed penguin behind his throne, behind his chair. Phones are open, 833-311-1984. Kevin Defoe says, I don't belong here. You may not. I just would advise against going to Mars. In all likelihood, Mars is a deep underground military base / slave camp gulag for the extremely brainwashed. And it's just going to get worse. I'm pretty sure deep space has always meant subterranean. And it's probably the case that we have a number of Truman Show style stages representing the various places. There's probably people in a slave pit on Mars. Like, that's how crazy it is. And I didn't make this up. There's actually a CIA agent. I think his name is David Knight. Is it? Let me double check this. Yes, I think that's him. It's one of these CIA agents who basically says that there were children being sent to Mars, as in slaves on Mars. And he talked about this on Alex Jones. That was the program. He's on the Alex Jones show. Here we go. New conspiracy theory. Children kidnapped for Mars slave colony. This was just a couple years ago. No, it was Robert David Steele. So Robert David Steele, ex-CIA, came across some information years ago, which obviously you wouldn't think this to be true, but now I'm looking at it as very likely. He says, we actually believe there's a colony on Mars that's populated by children who are kidnapped and sent into space on a 20-year ride, so that once they get to Mars, they have no alternative but to be slaves on the colony. Now, Elon Musk has already given hints that he's open to indentured servitude. It's definitely feudalism. No doubt a gulag dressed up as progress. But the notion here that some CIA agent came across information about children being shipped to Mars sounds like fantasy. But I think it's very likely that he just thinks that Mars being this distant planet out there, when no, Mars is probably under Arizona. So he probably didn't know the whole story. Again, phones are open, but I'm going to go ahead and continue to play the voicemail. We'll go on past this voicemail if it doesn't. I mean, it's a long one. There's several minutes. We may return to this one. And I encourage this. If you want to record a 20-minute podcast on my voicemail here, 833-311-1984, have at it. We will parse through it. If you want to defend your globe, defend the space station, convince us that that wasn't a mouse on the outside of the Merlin 5 rocket back in December of 2019, Mousegate, call in, because I'm getting a lot of flack on Twitter for calling out the fakery. In fact, I'm going to probably go through some of these tweets. We've had some backs and forth, and they just assume that we're dumb because we don't believe any of their ridiculous claims. But I'm actually arriving at this conclusion that outer space itself is actually a metaphysical concept. It's like heaven, but worse than that. Worse than just being a big deception that they're lying about going up there. I think it's a concept designed to mystify the mind, to more or less leash the human imagination. So it doesn't even make any logical sense to talk about going anywhere further than 12,000 miles, because then obviously you'd be coming around the backside of the ball. And I think it's a perfect kind of a way of blinkering. You know how you put the blinkers on the side of a horse's head so it doesn't look left or right? I think humanity's been blinkered by a false cosmography. And I think that's what this is ultimately about. And the flat earth question gets people to actually examine evidence. And they hate that because their evidence sucks. Nobody can stand by the moon landing unless you're a sworn liar and you're in on it, or you're a dupe. There's no reason to think that thing actually was real. That was a horrible movie. And by the way, they're bringing back rear screen projection for the next phase, for the lunar colony, for the Martian colony. But it's not a flat screen. It's this surrounding LED display, way more convincing than green screen. So we're not going to even have any more green screen bloopers to laugh at. And there are plenty. We have a 20-year blooper reel called the International Space Station, which is really little more than a government reality TV show presented as news. I mean, it's a psyop. And it's just a travesty that so many otherwise intelligent people fall for it. Okay, let's go ahead and listen to the rest of this message.
A great example of this would be a Simon Dan. That's the person he tends to point out most. Oh, and number two, there's this guy named Jilly Gill, and he does quite a lot of
Okay, he's talking about Simon Dan. You may know Simon Dan. He famously rapped "My Love Don't Cost a Thing." I believe it's J-Lo, and he changed it to "Where's the Curvature," and then he disappeared. And many think that his disappearance was related to his impromptu flat Earth J-Lo rap. Okay, next voicemail message.
I'm calling Infinite Plane Radio. They're reviewing movies, and I had wondered if you'd covered. You probably have. This is my first time to see this site.
Dead Zone. He's referencing Dead Zone. Okay, let's see. He says they use all the jargon and lingo, including Wuhan, China, social distancing, CDC. Okay, interesting. So this individual sent me a list of videos and clips to go through. I'll go ahead and listen to a few more seconds here.
Episode was called Plague, and it was done in 2003. That uses all the jargon, all the lingo, all the terminology being applied today for COVID.
Okay. Excellent message here. I'll look into it, Dead Zone. There's a number of them. Okay, he has something else here. He says, and with 9/11, there's 3 episodes of Back to the Future. Okay, I'll have to, I'm going to have to actually go back and watch some of these. But there's been a number of things. Dead Zone. There's another one, I think it's called The Dark on Netflix, worth looking at because it has to do with the same theory or concept of time travel. And it has a really interesting take on it. Let me go ahead and bring that up because I believe it was a Netflix series that only ran, I think it ended already. It's called Dark, TV series. Here we go. Yeah, it ran in 2017 through 2019. So the Dark TV series follows characters from a fictional town where children are disappearing. And it turns out that the disappearances, and this actually kind of connects to what we were talking about with the Mars underground bases. The disappearances have to do with several generations of this conspiracy of time travel, which happens, there's some sort of a portal that happens to be beneath a nuclear power plant. So the whole story, though, is about wormholes and traveling to other worlds. And wormholes are key here. Anytime we hear about space travel, we're always hearing about wormholes. And my contention is they are psychologically preparing us for the notion that even though the TRAPPIST system is 6 trillion light years away, we couldn't possibly get there. Even though we have 7 Earth-like planets, but better than ours with no global warming yet, we can't get there, it's too far. However, and this is according to Neil deGrasse Tyson, if we can get into a wormhole, yeah, we could go there. So I think they're acclimating people to this ridiculous notion of wormholes. And if you look, not just SpaceX, but also Virgin Galactic spend most of their money, I think, digging holes, tunnels, underground travel. Why? Why high-speed underground travel if these guys are supposed to be getting us to Mars? So anyway, this TV series has to do with wormholes and other worlds. But now here's where it gets interesting. It has to do with the time travel sends people back in 33-year increments. So the first season includes years 86 and 2019. So they're spaced 33 years apart. Second season, 1953 and 86. The following season has a parallel, what goes 87 and 2020. So anyway, what we're seeing here is this notion of time travel being connected to wormholes. And again, the wormhole beneath a power plant happens to be on property under the control of a very influential family. So the whole story, I believe, has a lot to do, though, with this idea of, well, fake travel. I mean, because I don't believe time travel is real, but I think that the idea of faking space travel is a reality. I mean, that's what Disneyland is really known for. And if you look at the pictures of Walt Disney hanging out with that Werner von Braun, it kind of tells you everything. Go ahead and call in, anybody, 833-311-1984. I'm not going to go through the rest of these voicemails yet. I got too many of them, and I want to go ahead and research some of the things, and then I'll return to them. Okay, a couple of other things, and then we'll... Phones are open, but I want to go ahead and cover a couple of things. Kyle Rittenhouse was released. So if you didn't know, Kyle Rittenhouse was bailed out, and this is kind of an interesting thing. I don't know if there's any significance to it, but I'm looking at every possible angle here. So he gets bailed out by Silver Spoon's actor. Now, the Silver Spoon's actor was a child actor, which I think is a very interesting thing here, because here you have a child actor bailing out a possible child actor. I'm trying to figure out if this was a staged event with special effects. The only trouble with this whole thing is the arm wound on Grosskreutz is so realistic. But then again, anything they can fake in the movies, they can fake in the news, even if it's broadcasted from a live stream. But you can't, or you can, but I choose not to automatically ignore evidence if it's in favor of, well, what it looks like. I mean, it looks real. However, we're open to the possibility. And I think there's a few things about this entire case that raise some eyebrows. One of them being his attorney. The fact that his attorney is Lynn Wood, who's already connected with a couple of well-known and well-established psychological operations. The Centurion Olympic Park bombing. He represented the parents of JonBenet Ramsey. So I think the whole thing's very curious. And then, of course, a child actor bailing out Kyle Rittenhouse. Kyle, being 17, connects to Q, wearing a white hat, front row seats at a Trump rally before he shuts down the riots in Kenosha. And then Trump shows up and gives $42 million to somebody. And then something else, too. The skateboarder, the strangler, Gruber, who was shot after the pedo was shot. Well, Gruber knew Jacob Blake. And I think that's a little too coincidental. So the guy that Kyle shot knew the guy that was shot that caused the riots to kick off. And there's a whole lot about the Jacob Blake case that I find to be very indicative of it being a hoax. Not only that Harris actually went and visited the guy. It's like, you're going to go visit a guy who was in the middle of assaulting his ex. I mean, the whole story makes zero sense if you take it as real. But, anyway, a few things about that whole Kyle Rittenhouse case raising some eyebrows here. And Lynn Wood is a very interesting character. Something else, too. Okay, so he got out on a $2 million bail. Don't know if he's grounded. Probably. Now, if it is real, I would only count one. No, I would count one death and one shooting. I don't think that the first death, if real, would count. I don't know why I see so many people on Twitter mourning for the pedo, who, by the way, died doing something he loved, right? Chasing a minor. Sorry. All right, so let's go ahead and continue. Oh, yeah, someone asked me if I discussed the hoax at the mall. Yeah, I saw that. I was like, wait a minute. Actually, the first thing I thought was, I tweeted this. I was like, wait, there's a shooting at a mall in Wisconsin, and Kyle Rittenhouse just got out. So I was like, has anybody seen Kyle? But no, obviously I think it's a hoax, probably to distract people from the whole election thing. And you already know my take on it, the election thing. I think that this is a psychological operation, and it's going to have a couple of other twists and turns. If you're in my Discord server, you know my predictions as to what's going to be happening. I mean, I think that this is going to be a major deal, a big deal for a lot of people, December 14th. There's going to be a lot of crying, gnashing of teeth. Okay, so the guy's name is Lynn Wood, and he was, of course, the attorney for, well, they call him attorney of the damned because of some of the cases he's represented and people he's really just pretty much saved. And this is one of these instances. And from the right, he's considered to be a political prisoner, now a hero. The left, he's a murderer. Now, mall psyops happen pretty much every year around Black Friday. We used to actually sit around on Black Fridays waiting for the mall shooting of the year. I don't even think it's worth looking into. I looked at it. It looked to me like it was probably there for some sort of disruption to change the change the news cycle, affect it. I don't think I mean, really, when was the last time we had an actual shooting that was real that the news media reported? They don't report on the real ones because it tends not to fit their narratives. It's not some bowl cut with a MAGA hat. Oh, by the way, it's 11/22. So would this be, in fact, the 63rd anniversary? No, 57th anniversary of the JFK assassination. Interesting timing. I mean, look, here's a couple of things, and I've been really closely examining the world stage script as it's unrolled in the last year, and many of you already know all this, but there's a subtext that's worth examining. And without even getting too deep into the names, just looking at the objective facts, like the fact that the sun set at 8:46 p.m. in the Twin Cities on the day that George Floyd died. 8:46 is the amount of time he was kneeling on Floyd's neck. It connects to 9/11. That's the time that the first of the Twin Towers was hit. So then on 9/11/2020 at 8:46 a.m., you have a national day of mourning where people are waving their flags at 8:46 as George Floyd's lawyer and his legal team are protesting wearing 8:46 on their faces for George Floyd, not for 9/11. Same number, same time, different meaning. Meanwhile, Derek Chauvin is in court on 9/11. So again, Derek, the name, is from a German hangman who hanged 3,000, as in 3,000 dead on 9/11. So it's an interesting choice for a name, not to mention Chauvin, and the Proud Boys call themselves Western chauvinists. And ultimately, this is about Western culture, Western civ, Western chauvinism versus this collectivism and communism represented by BLM, which we know it's not really communism, but this is how they split these things. One of the prayer patriots is shot in the chest at 8:46 on August 29th by an Antifa who says it was the first shot of a civil war. So there's a lot of scripting and coding. These are not coincidences. So when they let Derek Chauvin out, they let him out at 11:22 a.m. Today's 11:22. Again, 11:22 is the day that JFK was shot. JFK was 46. George Floyd was also 46. Derek Chauvin, on his last mugshot, had this curious resemblance to Lee Harvey Oswald. So looking at this from the point of view of it being a script, and there's a lot of, well, I would call this coding, this nomenclature, but what I see here, it looks to me like something is about to happen. It looks to me like there's going to be some sort of a JFK level event. So anyway, 57th anniversary. Now, one other thing, 57th anniversary of MLK's I Have a Dream speech was the death of Chadwick Boseman. And this was, of course, trending on Twitter. Rip King, because he played King. Rip Black Panther. He played Black Panther, the Marvel character. No relation to the civil rights group, who happened to be celebrating the 57th anniversary there at the Washington Mall. And then the DNC has their performance. They sing the national anthem. They have 50, one from each state, plus 7 celebrities, 57 singing the song that they kneel to. Now, there's a few other coincidences here, but I'm just suggesting that these aren't coincidences. And it goes pretty deep, and it goes into the names of all the characters on the stage. That's why I'm looking at this thing very carefully. That's why I'm not convinced that Kyle Rittenhouse is anything other than something to give QAnoners hope. He's 17, white hat, stops the riots, the only person to, really stand up because there was a power vacuum. The police were letting the rioters run amok. And so it looks like a really effective drama. Now, beyond these coincidences, there's the predictive programming we're all familiar with. And what it tells me is that 95% of what the public believes is essentially scripted like a reality TV show. I mean, that's just the nature of living in a propaganda echo chamber. It's just worse than anybody would think. Going through some comments, Nunya Business says, what are your thoughts on Flat Earth F word getting charged for breaking quarantine? It'll probably get dropped. I mean, I don't know how bad it is out there in Canada. I just don't think they want to deal with him. And he didn't commit any crimes. He didn't hurt anybody. He bragged online. He poked fun at politicians. But the fact is, he's an instigator. He's not acting like a victim, and he has a point. And a lot of people actually agree with him. We have plenty of examples. You can look around at the people, like even right now as we speak, I think in California, there are people protesting these lockdowns. They're protesting the curfews. Meanwhile, you have people like Governor Newsom, still going to parties, celebrating, and then saying, my bad, when he's caught. He wasn't going to come out and admit to it. And this was after his buddy there, Pelosi, got busted without wearing a mask. I mean, these people are utter hypocrites, and nobody stands for it. I think what they did to his yoga studio, though, I think they owe him. Like, honestly, I think he ought to sue. I don't know if he can. But anyway, I think it's a problem for them, because he's not an Alex Jones, he's not a Joe Rogan. When you have people who are already integrated into the system and they can lose a lot, they might back down. Do you remember Alex Jones was calling out the Sandy Hookers for years? And then Megyn Kelly shows up, and next thing you know, he says, I think my listeners are all psychotic and Sandy Hook was real. And there's Joe Rogan. He knew how the moon landing was faked. He talked about it. Then he said, no, actually, I believe it's real. Well, there's no way you can go from believing it's fake to believing it's real without reverse engineering your original arguments. Like, if I ever come out here someday and I start talking about how the space station is real, and that's it, and I leave it at that and change the subject, then there's probably something wrong. I was probably forced to say it because I have made too many points that I would have to reverse engineer. I would have to explain away the various discrepancies, and I would have to find a lot of time to do this because there are so many green screen glitches, harnesses. Man, last week, was it 2 weeks ago, Flathead Politics had a video where there was actually someone on the space station, supposedly, and you could hear him. He said, read your lines. Like, wait, you got a director and a production assistant on the space station? That's weird. Not astronauts. Okay, let's see what else. Going through comments. Stranger says everlasting hoax. Oh yeah, it's totally a hoaxed world. I think that the thing is, entertainment is actually propaganda. Entertainment is just the side effect. It's just really, really tasty poison. And it's always been this way. They replaced the dominant world paradigm shapers like Bibles with the televised version. So the television is your Bible, if you ask me. It's the world religion. And there is a world religion. Even the atheists are a part of it. They've replaced the archaic concept of heaven with space. The three pillars of this new religion. You have one, climate change, which is eschatology, judgment for your sins. They've actually found a way to scientifically replace sin. As in, they have a sin. There's a concept of sin, but they can actually diagnose it. They can say, hey, look, we see it under a microscope. The scientists will back this up, and it's called the virus. So now they can have an entire puritanical revision of our society, where moral relativists are suddenly keeping to themselves. People are like free love, they're against the nuclear family, polyamory. Now they're just, nope, everybody's socially distanced. And that's because virus is much like the old concept of sin. It's a way for the priesthood to regulate people. So you have the climate change, the pandemic model, which is, again, used for social control. And then they've redefined evil as systemic racism. Now, systemic racism is a hoax, big fat hoax. In fact, you can find studies on the number of racial hate crimes that are actually staged in hoax. I mean, Jussie Smollett did us all a huge favor because he shined a light on a huge issue. I mean, you all know about the fake school shootings, the fake terror attacks, the fake climate change, the fake COVIDs, but you got to look into how many hate crimes are actually faked. I mean, just last week, there was an individual who burned his own car. Watch, man burns car. I think he spray painted Trump on it, like vote Trump. There's so many of these. So many fake hate crimes. Anyway, this guy burns his own car. He blamed a Trumper or tried to frame somebody, and it turned out he burned his own car. And again, this is insurance fraud, but also it was a fake hate crime. And there were so many of these. Speaking of fake hate crimes, there's every indication that the world is in all this turmoil over recent events, and a lot of these are fake and instigated. If you really look into the George Floyd, Derek Chauvin thing, it's pretty obvious that you're looking at a psychological operation, and we've been breaking that down for some time. But again, a fake outrage. They manufacture outrage, and then they have their agents in the field ready to go. I mean, did you see the very first night of the riots in Minneapolis? One of the first buildings they burned happened to be the manufacturer called 7 Sigma, and they produce super realistic bodies to train on, bodies undergoing respiratory distress for paramedics and EMTs. And some of them have a very curious resemblance to George Floyd, but they can't breathe. That's what they're designed to do. And so I was looking into this company. They opened up in Minneapolis in 1987. 33 years later, they burned. Now, 7 Sigma Simulation Systems. That's the name of the company. Burned in the riots will leave Minneapolis. So I looked into this company again. Since 1987, they were right there across from the stores that were looted and this place was burned. But one of their dummies happens to look, like I said, curiously like Floyd. Now, I have this, and I'm still trying to find some kind of way to substantiate it, but I did get a commenter on YouTube who says that he talked to someone who was there and was told there was a anti-police brutality training video being filmed and that there was a dummy present. So take a listen. This is what it could have been. Modular and high fidelity airway trainers. So if you look on the right, it looks like a very realistic person. It's realistic intubation simulation. And it's so realistic, if you look at some of these training dolls, that they actually find them useful for even surgery, open heart surgery, brain surgery, internal organs. They can bleed. So hyper-realistic simulations. And what are the odds that this company, which had been there for 33 years, would happen to be one of the first ones burned? I mean, I didn't see any looters carrying realistic intubation simulation dolls, did you? And I looked at the internal video footage, and it looks all to me very consistent with this being a big hoax. For all we know, Floyd is hanging out with Derek Chauvin on Epstein Island, which is really just a movie set. Dollar Vigilante went out to Epstein Island, and he found out that those doors, those massive doors, are just murals painted. Finbar says, the Flat Earth Report is spot on. Listen for a couple days. Awesome stuff. Hey, thanks. Yeah, the Flat Earth Report podcast, and here's the concept. The universe of ideas has a border, and they call it borderline content. You have these shows that would deal with this area. This is where you would have, Twilight Zone, X-Files, Fringe. But borderline content is something that today it's no longer considered entertainment to entertain ideas that go beyond, the known world, because now it's considered dangerous misinformation to question the authorities. And they have been trying to justify eliminating information that questions establishment science. So now the flat Earth question is no longer harmless or even funny. You can't even talk about it to ridicule it because now it's a slippery slope. And if you don't believe in the globe or you question it, now you're going to ditch on vax and then you're going to catch a disease. You're going to give it to somebody else. And now you killed somebody because of the flat Earth meme. They've been trying to associate it with vax denial, and they mostly use shame to address the topic. But it's like, wait, you can talk about aliens. You can talk about time travel. You can talk about all sorts of things. Harry Potter, magic. Magic, fantasy, that's all just as unscientific as an archaic world conception. And another thing, too, and this is why I have that podcast, because we're dealing with outlandish ideas that shouldn't be banned just because they're outlandish. We should have the right to be wrong. What is free speech if not the freedom to be wrong? You're not free if you are prevented from taking risks. And you have to be, it has to be at least possible for you to come to the wrong answers, or you're not really free. And that's where they're taking us. If all of your information was only coming through mainstream acceptable channels, you would live in a fundamentally different universe than people who know how much these media companies actually manipulate the minds of their believers. So I think it's an important question, and it's not going to go away. And the best they can do is attack this straw man. Like, well, you don't have a model, or what's at the edge? If the Earth was flat, cats would have pushed everything off by now. Or they have other things that kind of complicate it, where they have other models that come out of the Bible or something like that, which that's fine if you're a biblical flat earther, but you have to know that you are just as lost as the globe earthers when it comes to evidence. And that's the main thing, evidence. Do you believe what you were shown on TV? Do you believe what NASA shows you when they do these launches? I mean, you're free to. But those of us who are experienced in video editing, or those of us who are visually literate, who can tell the difference still, we're always laughing at this stuff. But it's getting to the point where I think it's almost sad. It's almost like illiteracy, but it's a visual counterpart where people and I've seen this happen with people who ought to know better. Joe Rogan, for example, I have a couple of clips where in one, he was looking at a Porsche and he was amazed by this thing until the guy said, well, that's just a rendering. He was blown away that this green Porsche wasn't even real, but it looked real. Then there was a video where a Bezos Blue Origin rocket was blasting off, and he said, that's fake. And the other guy said, no, that's real. So he says, why does it look so fake? So I can see here where some people who know what the right answers are actually going to be confused. And this is, I think, another reason why they have inundated us with horrible CGI when real props would look better. I think this has all been the merging of fantasy with reality, which is what a psyop is. I mean, you just take, for example, fill-in-the-blank school shooting. Well, that's a fiction superimposed on reality. And then it's augmented. We live in an augmented reality. Okay, let's go ahead and continue here. Now, look, I still listen to Joe Rogan on occasion. I know a lot of people say, look, for some reason, I think people hold him to a different standard. Like they think that Joe Rogan, because he knows the moon landing is fake, is somehow some kind of voice for truthers. And maybe it's because he has Alex Jones on once in a while. But, really, he's just doing interviews, and he's actually a skilled podcaster. And I wouldn't really expect anything more. Anybody to be acceptable at that level has to be within due bounds, within their this area of borderline content. They can go close to the edge, but not that close. I mean, they can go to the edge of acceptable discourse, and then they have to kind of, usually they have a easy way out. I remember when Joe Rogan was first asked about flat Earth, he says, well, isn't that just Nazis? Doesn't it just take you into, Hail Hitler and ethnic nationalism? And why would he arrive at that conclusion? Well, it's because you have so many people out there who have conflated conspiracies with conspiracies to where conspiracy theory itself really just means in most people's minds, crazy, hateful, right-wing, racist. I've been pointing out how recently the trend has been to go from calling them conspiracy theorists to calling them conspiracists or conspiracists. I mean, they had to throw the word racist in there, but nobody ever gives the left credit for their conspiracy theories. I mean, global warming is a conspiracy theory, is it not? The idea that a face diaper will save you from the COVID devil, that's a conspiracy theory, and it's coming from the left, which is pretty much, I mean, it's kind of it's not even that bipartisan, actually. It's super partisan. Now, the one place where they both agree, though, and this is important because we're talking about the Earth's shape, the one place where the far left and the far right and all the moderates all agree is that outer space is where we're going. We're going to Mars. We're going to the moon. That's the one thing they all agree on. And that's really the end game. It doesn't matter how they get us there, I think. And it's fascinating what they've done here. So the common understanding for people who've been following this story, they know that, well, the whole communist idea, the hive mind, collectivizing everything, it has been advanced under the guise of environmentalism. They've replaced the poor with class warfare with the environment, although they've retained all the main elements because climate change disproportionately affects the poor, kind of like COVID. I mean, it's all class warfare, but they've managed to kind of hide it under the guise of environmentalism. So the right wing knows this, so they don't fall for the eschatology of global warming. They know environmentalism is, well, it's watermelon Marxism, green on the outside, red on the inside. But they fall for the space program. And the fact is, the space program and the Agenda 2030 are one and the same. Mars is not progress. The moon is not progress. That's the illusion they've sold us on. It's actually just a gulag. If you really break it down, what it takes to get up there. And I mentioned this earlier, Musk has actually veered into indentured servitude. Not only indentured servitude, a couple of things. One, SpaceX will not recognize Earth laws. Now, before I go on, because he's talking about in these planned Mars colonies, Free Planet will adopt self-governing principles. Now, that might sound fine. Just like the idea of Chazistan might have sounded fine to the people when they first started settling there. But what we're looking at with SpaceX and this planned Mars colony, if you ask me, like I said, it's a slave camp like the one that CIA agent was talking about. That's where I think it ends. And here's why I think so. Ghislaine Maxwell, real or not, I mean, I don't know what you all think about the whole Pizzagate thing and all that, but this is worth mentioning. So there's this thing called Terra Mar this just came out recently, I think. The Terra Mar project was something that Ghislaine Maxwell, this is Epstein's girlfriend, that she started. And so it was an environmental nonprofit organization, but basically she was a citizen of a place called Terra Mar. So where is Terra Mar? Well, it's nowhere. I mean, it's just kind of like in the middle of nowhere. The idea is that there are so many places in the ocean. I think 64% of the ocean lies outside the jurisdiction of any country. So it's kind of like a commons, a global commons. So she has this place called Terra Mar. And there's even a logo and a flag. She's a citizen of Terra Mar. She let this out during this deposition. She mentioned it. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. I wonder what kind of laws they have out there. Kind of got me thinking, though, about this thing with Elon Musk saying, oh, we're not going to have your Earth laws. So he's got some, I mean, and again, Elon Musk is a very curious character. He's obsessed with Gene Wilder. And if you look at Willy Wonka, the whole concept of this tunnel that takes you to another world where everybody is Joe Rogan sized and colored like Donald Trump, the little Oompa Loomps. Well, that's kind of what it looks like. Sending people in these tunnels underground to a place they think is Mars. But listen to this, Mars utopia or indentured servitude. Last week, we heard a little more about SpaceX's plans for Mars colonization when Elon revealed loans will be made available to help people relocate to Mars. This raises important questions. What conditions can colonists expect? You're going to die. A harmonious society where people are free to express their creativity and discover their potential? or a cross between a Russian gulag and a salt mine. And that's what I'm suggesting. So here's where I'm kind of tying this all together. If you look into space communism, it has a history. And actually, a lot of the art is quite good. So if you ever do a search for space communism, you'll find that outer space has always been sold as a sort of an ideal that, we screwed it up down here, but we can start from scratch up there and we'll do it right. So there's a ton of old Soviet vintage space propaganda. So they have been selling people on this notion for some time. Now, the communist revolution failed to unite the workers of the world because people like their stuff and their property. They like having their higher standard of living. They don't want to live in gulags. So the idea was, well, how do you subvert the minds of the capitalists and get them to go back into this or go into this system? And this is what I think they've done. I think they've used space idealism, space utopianism, to sell otherwise free people on the idea that progress lies in divesting oneself of property and leaving the world behind and living with some, who knows, megalomaniac? I mean, the richest man on earth. I mean, Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. He's got like what, $11 billion. And he's in his home sticking 6-inch Q-tips up his nose, giving himself COVID tests. He's like, oh, positive. Give me another one. So he takes another COVID test and sticks the Q-tip up to his brain-blood barrier. Okay, this one I'm negative, much better. Let me check again. He sticks another 6-inch Q-tip up his nose into his blood-brain barrier. This time he comes out negative. So he's distressed. He takes a fourth one. This time he comes back positive. So then he goes to Twitter and he says, hey, I just took 4 tests for COVID-19 and 2 of them came back positive. 2 of them came back negative. So look, Elon Musk tweeted he took 4 COVID tests in one day. Quote, I thought I was dying. I mean, do you realize what it takes? So I'm finding this to be very indicative of a madman, or he's just an actor and he's making this stuff up. SpaceX CEO Elon Musk said he took 4 tests in one day, 2 negative, 2 positive. He had a series of tweets stating he had a cough, sniffles, and a slight fever. Now, this is the perfect time to bring up Kung Flu. So the term Kung Flu is what we called it when it first came out, because when you looked at the Wuhan situation, it wasn't like a regular flu. You'd see citizens walking down the street. Someone else would just be filming casually with a vertical cell phone camera, typical that you see in psychological operations. And these people would just fall on their faces, bleeding out their mouths, bleeding out their noses. So it was like an invisible ghost had kicked them in the back of the head and knocked them on their faces. That's how COVID-19 was sold to us when it first hit, when the panic first hit. It was killing Wuhan. It looked like that zombie movie 28 days later. But now it doesn't do that. Now it gives you the sniffles. Like, I want to see the second wave. I want to see a first wave. Sniffles doesn't count. Commenter here says not all psyops are bad. No, a lot of them are actually quite good. We started this back in, I think, 2018. We started keeping up with the crisis actors because it actually is pretty good. And one of the newer developments is like more and more crisis actors are becoming activists and they're becoming celebrities. Parkland is a great example of this, where they were integrated into reality right out of the screen. This is the job of the mainstream media. What it does, it's incredible, but it actually takes control of people's reality by taking movie characters and fusing them. They have total control of the narrative, and they manufacture atrocities, and the public responds accordingly. It's amazing how you can have a fake shooting like the one at Borderline, which I can explain why that one's fake just by pointing out a few of the coincidences. About 50 of the people who were shot at in Vegas were shot at again exactly 13 months later in a different state, in a different city. 50 of the same people. Meanwhile, there was a drill down the street where 50 crisis actors were rehearsing or practicing for a shooting event, and it was modeled off of the Vegas shooting. Like, it's fake. However, the next day, even though it was fake, you had a ton of people who had donated blood. A ton of people showing up at these candlelight vigils crying. So yes, it's fake, but it actually brings real blood and real tears. Commenter says, I know Elon, he's a great guy, but he got too influential too fast, and now the praying mantises have their hooks in their favorite marionette. Well, he's one of the space popes, and I don't mean to sound hypercritical. I just think, the whole space program is intended to enslave all of mankind. So I recognize he's just a figurehead. For all we know, he might actually believe it's real. You have to give him the benefit of the doubt. It might not even be possible to actually go along with the program if you knew how fake it was. Like, I know for sure Don Petit might be the only astronaut who thinks that he's actually been to space. But no, there's really only a small handful of the whole population. If you really look at the numbers who've gone up there, it's very few, just less than 1,000 people. And we don't have any decent quality footage, and it's been getting worse. Okay, now I have a question here. So we have a commenter who's friends with Elon Musk. So I've got two questions. One, does he intentionally play jokes where he's willing to put CGI mice on the outside of rockets for his own amusement, or is he not in the know about that? Like, I would like to know about that. Does he know about Mousegate, or rather, did he have anything to do with it? Okay, let's see what else we have here. Oh yeah, one more thing. So last thing I'll bring up on Elon Musk, because this is what I suspect might actually be happening. So if you look at his obsession with the number 42 and the book Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which, by the way, this is its 42nd year. That book was published in 1978. He's obsessed with the number 42 and that book. And so when you find out so many of his missions have catchphrases, or the number 42 is encoded into nearly everything, well, he's launching 42,000 CubeSats, orbiting routers, Starlink satellites. So we're going to have 42,000 of these CubeSats orbiting our globe, giving us internet. Now, if you look at the movie Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, it starts off with the world being destroyed. The main character is told, don't panic. Think of the Tesla Roadster, and it says, don't panic on the dashboard. Well, the movie starts out with the world being surrounded by cube-shaped UFOs, aliens, and they blow up the Earth. So I'm looking at Elon Musk working with NASA. The military is like, yeah, we need your help delivering bombs anywhere in the world in an hour. 42,000 CubeSats. This is just a theory. It probably isn't true, but it wouldn't shock me if he wasn't some sort of megalomaniac with 42,000 explosives dangling above key strategic points, and that this is the alien invasion we're all waiting for, where he could just push buttons and we would have bombardments like we've never seen. Perhaps kinetic weapons, like the rods of God. Have you heard of those? They have these like telephone pole-sized metal rods they drop from space or really high, and supposedly they would leave craters. Okay, one step too far, who might actually be Elon says, I'm telling you, he knows about all of it. He just isn't in control, and he's focused on things in his life he has no control of. Right. Okay. Let's move on. It's like, what is he? Idiot savant or evil genius about to take over the world. Okay, so we talked about the space cannibalism and Soylent Green. And yes, that's the main point I brought up with that. Space cannibalism, the whole topic started when 3D printed meat using human cells was being discussed. And it just seems that people will go with anything if science says so. So science says it's not actually cannibalism. And you can argue about this, but the company, and this is so bizarre, the company is called Ouroboros. The Ouroboros snake, a steak, named after the ancient Egyptian snake that eats itself. It can be grown from cells scraped from the inside of your cheeks. So the Ouroboros, the symbol, is a snake eating itself. And this is a company that's selling you on human steak. I guess you would just swab your cheek, drop it in the 3D printer, print out your lunch. Auto-cannibalism, I guess is what you would call it. Now, auto-cannibalism doesn't have the same problems. It's not as problematic as the kind where you do it to others. Flat Fact says there is no car in space, it's CGI. Oh, you know what I think it is? It's this new form of rear screen projection. So this is what you have to look forward to. We're not going to be able to debunk it anymore. So it was fun while it lasted. We can always look back and laugh at the Apollo, laugh at the space shuttles, laugh at the ISS, but the next iteration, it's going to be very hard to convince people that it's not real. And what they're using is very similar to rear screen projection, but it's not even a green screen. That's the thing. And that's normally what caused them to give up the game here. They would expose themselves on the edges. You'd see the green screen, you'd see the errors, here it is. It's called The Technology That's Replacing the Green Screen. It's a video by Vox, and I'm just going to play a few seconds here.
Screen and blue screen. You know it becomes the mist-covered planet, deserted jump background for a ball, hacked athletics, panoramic water,
So what we're seeing here, I'm sorry the video is a little too slick for my tastes. We're looking at a room, an environment surrounded by a screen that covers the walls and the ceiling, and the participants even say that they lose sight of where the edge is. Kind of like in the Truman Show, how he just walks up to the wall and then he just exits. He opens a door on it. It's like that. You can't tell. And what's more, because the screens are so far back, and it's all high def, the reflections are very realistic. Kind of like what you might see in a good planetarium. But these environments are so convincing that, again, let me go ahead and play. The actress here says that she was reaching into a scene and she inadvertently grabbed the wall. And apparently that's how realistic it is. So yeah, good luck debunking this.
His pauldron or his helmet, it was just like, you can't avoid seeing things being reflected. So creating this volume where we literally could close up the whole thing into one giant circle.
So it's a totally closed environment with high def LED screens everywhere. And there is really, it's so seamless. But this is probably how they're doing Mars. So it doesn't have to be out in Canada or Greenland or Arizona, some desert somewhere. It could just be in a gymnasium. So it's easier and easier to fake this stuff. And if you've seen the behind the scenes of Inception, then you already know how the astronauts are hanging in the space station. I mean, watch it critically just once. If you haven't looked at the space station astronauts, watch critically once and notice how tight their belts are. And ask yourself, how tight would your belt be if you were in 0G, where there were no forces tugging down at your pants? This is a picture from Virgin. I have to show you this. This is 2 Virgin employees, Virgin Galactic, in a small pod inside of a vacuum tube. This is the future of space travel, if you ask me. Commenter says Elon is the Martian Pope. Yeah, I kind of think so. Nunya Business says Flat Earth F Word met Mark Sargent and confirmed he's not a shill. I heard Mark Sargent's going to do a McDonald's commercial for pancakes, which might not be a bad thing if you think about it, because they're trying to suggest this idea is inherently dangerous, or asking questions is dangerous. So, I mean, what would you rather deal with? An idea being banned, go to the gulag for saying the earth is flat, or people laughing at it? Which is kind of the norm. But I guess they assumed they could laugh it away, but they didn't realize the power of, well, the cultishness of groups of people to form self-reinforcing echo chambers. That's one thing. I mean, even the conspiracy theories that are wrong will never go away. Or the ones that have nothing substantiating them, that don't have any legitimate questions, that are based on arguments from incredulity or just simply speculation or conjecture. For example, the Mandela effect. That is one of the most widely debunked conspiracy theories, but yet it retains its popularity. And it's probably because it's fun. Maybe it's simple. Maybe it offers easy explanations, like many religions do. And in many ways, I would categorize the Mandela effect not as a conspiracy theory, but I would categorize it as a form of New Age philosophy. But it's actually based on a rather mundane thing called the misinformation effect. I mean, there's a reason why 3/4 of the people who are wrongfully convicted are in there because of eyewitness testimony that was faulty. It's because eyewitness testimony is not that reliable. Rudy says speech is becoming not just censored, it's becoming illegal. That's correct. And they're really trying hard to go after satire. Remember, Twitter was going after the Babylon Bee? And this is where we're at, though. And so the other day, I think it was Dave Chappelle did a comedy act, and it was pathetic. It wasn't funny. I think it's a conspiracy theory and possibly the only real Mandela effect that Dave Chappelle was ever funny. Because all he's doing is reinforcing mainstream government agitprop. I mean, he's a government jester. He's like, well, at least because of COVID, there's no bowl cut shooters killing kids in the schools. And it's like, that was never true in the first place. It's like, it's just his way of saying that white kids are deadly. It's racist, but whatever it is, it's not all that funny because it's based on what we know to be a lie. But that's the nature of government jesters. Their jokes will always be within those parameters. Like South Park, for example. There was an episode of South Park where they were talking about school shootings, but instead of ridiculing the whole idea of these hysterical propaganda films being broadcast on the news, instead they made this ironic point about, yeah, there was a school shooting, but that wasn't the most interesting thing at school that day. So again, it was kind of an indictment of America, which is what they always do. No, America's so violent, these things are normal. It's like, no, that's not the angle that you would take if you were a legitimate comedian. But what's his name? George Carlin, I think, is probably the last real comedian who wasn't completely sold out. But most of his work came out before a lot of the genies were released from the bottle. And one of the biggest genies to be released from the bottle was the crisis actor one. And they can't put that one back in as much as they would like to. Shout out to the Parkland acting troupe for that one. And that's keeping up with the Crisis Actors season 1, because that's one of the first things that gave us true insight into the nature of mainstream media manipulation, 1, and 2, it exposed that false flag theory is actually there to guardrail people so they don't go into auto hoaxing. Commenter says, which YouTuber woke you up to flat earth? Oh, there's this misconception that flat earth started on YouTube, but no, the Flat Earth Society has been very active for a long time. And really they had an internet presence. You can find a lot of their writings, a lot of their books. Who knows what books were burnt when one of their leaders had his house burned, I think. But anyway, it's been around forever, but it was recently popularized on YouTube. But the funny thing is, all of the YouTubers, and this is still true today, they call Flat Earth Society controlled opposition with no evidence. It's a weird form of stealing all of their content and not giving them credit. It's like I was going to the 24/7 Flat Earth Discord channel and they said, do not mention the Flat Earth Society, they're controlled opposition. And I've had a couple of phone calls. I've talked to a couple of people involved with the Flat Earth Society, and I didn't detect anything weird about them. they're just not activists. They're not organizing. They're not doing conferences, but they definitely have all of the content, the ideas. It's more or less a library, but it's strange that they're so often disrespected by people who have just stolen their content. So yes, most YouTubers who claim to have invented the flat earth theory, which is, again, bizarre. So many people competing for this position of, I discovered it on YouTube first. I was there in 2015. I was there in 2014. I was there 3 months before you. It's like, well, it reminds me of religions or something. That's the culty side of it. The fact is, I think the first time it really broke on YouTube was I think it might have been Mark Sargent's Flat Earth Clues that got most people into it. And that's because he broke it down into 13 or 14 videos. Now, you may disagree with his conclusions. I think his conclusion is that we live underneath a glass dome. My questions about the dome would be, why would we assume it to be curved? I'm mostly interested in, lately I've been trying to look into this channel. It's called Sturgio Studio 10. I'm trying to either debunk it or at least just demonstrate. I'm trying to find out for myself how much of this can actually be, perhaps a bias. I mean, it's kind of like not wishful thinking, but when you're used to seeing something, it's hard to be objective. For example, if you're looking at an AE projection and the 6 continents displayed around the North Pole, and then you have the Antarctic on the outside, you superimpose it over a certain quadrant of the moon, and you find an interesting number of correlations between the craters and the land masses. And there's this channel, Sturgio Studios 10, who believes that the moon is some sort of a projection occurring in the ionosphere, or ionos flat, whatever it is, but that it's some sort of a projection, and that it's not a physical object, therefore, and that those are not craters, but that it is in fact a projection of what's beneath it. So if you imagine the Batman signal, it's basically a spotlight, and you have a bat painted on it, and it projects the bat onto the clouds. He's suggesting the moon is something similar to that, where there is, and this is not my concept, it's his, that there is beneath us some type of a black sun, some sort of source of light below that is projecting up through the ground above, and that it's projecting through the land masses, and that the moon is the spotlight. The dark masses represent the land, and the white would be where it's projecting straight through the oceans. So he has done a lot of work in correlating the known land masses with craters. And yes, there's an interesting series of alignments that I think it's at least worth looking at. However, if it's true, and this is what I find most interesting about it, if it's true, then 2/3 of the moon would then refer to other land masses, that these other massive craters we're seeing would actually, it would kind of suggest that we only know about a small fraction of the world that we're on. If this moon map or this reflection theory, and again, it is a theory that's based on the world being not a ball, outer space not being what they say. Okay, I'm going through some comments here. Adaptivia says Biden will cancel the Space Force. I heard that Mike Pence was radicalizing the Space Force to go after aliens who he believes to be demons. He's kind of hoping that would happen. I mean, there's still time. Rudy says there was always a Flat Earth Society in the UK. They'd be on TV. Oh, yeah, exactly. They got a lot of press coverage. In fact, you could find 70s, 80s. It's not a new topic. It's just that the internet gave everything new life. Everything, quite literally. Like, do you remember Bilu? That little green alien from Brazil? Bilu was pretty much obscure, but a lot of people knew about him in Brazil, but now he's one of the most popular, I think, examples of like a real alien, if you believe in aliens. But he was only made popular because of YouTube. And then so like people are into him now. Well, there have been people who have been into Bilu for decades. Okay, commenter says, I do not believe that the stars rotate around the southern star. I've never seen anything close to that. Okay, look, this is something else too. The globe is bipolar. You know, it has the two poles. The flat Earth, if it is flat, there's only one pole, if you would want to call it a pole. And it wouldn't be the North Pole, it'd be the center. And so when you say South Pole, well, what do you mean South Pole? You're talking about a circle. So the way I think of it, if this is the case, I would imagine that Antarctica wouldn't even necessarily have to be a, quote, ice wall surrounding a disk. If anything, Antarctica would probably be, like if it's a clock, and we're looking at the North Pole as the center of the clock, Antarctica would probably occupy from 4 to 6 o'clock, that region. We don't know what's from 7 to 3. You know, maybe you can take a boat to an unoccupied continent way better than this place. No taxes, no Democrats. And they don't want you to know this. And this is something that would explain the space program. If there were more land masses, they would want to bottleneck human migration. And what better way to do so than to say, well, the only way to exit is to squeeze into one of these obelisks and wait for us to blast you out there. But it'll take us several decades. Okay, I'm going through some comments here. Commenter says, my friend has done time-lapse photography and he reckons this proves the Earth is a globe. Well, most of the people who reckon that they've proved the Earth to be a globe are arguing against a straw man. As in, they still haven't separated the Earth from space. And that's the main thing here. We're not talking about a flat planet versus a round planet. And that's why I say these debates are fallacious. Because the globe addict, the baller, is thinking, okay, I believe in a ball Earth. He believes in a disk Earth. So they're thinking of just two different objects in space. No, that's not ever going to lead to a legitimate debate, because the flat Earth concept isn't saying that we believe we're on a pizza in space. It's suggesting that there isn't space, that the universe might be infinite and we're probably on the bottom, if anything. I mean, you've all seen the ridiculous meme of a disk in space and it gets hit by a meteor and then all the dinosaurs get flung off. Like, yeah, that's not going to happen. That's not what anybody believes. It's kind of funny, I admit, but it's a straw man argument and you're not winning any points by not addressing the real fundamental issues here. Commenter says, are you conspiratained? See, they're trying to ban conspiratainment. They don't want it to be legal for you to be entertained by questioning reality at any level. Well, reality as they define it. So I mentioned earlier X-Files, Twilight Zone, Fringe. These are all examples of what I consider, what we know to be, well, it's conspiratainment, but it's mainstream acceptable conspiratainment. So you can have conspiracy theories if it involves aliens probing you, or hairy men in the woods who only leave one footprint at a time. Like, how come no one has ever considered that Bigfoot might be a monopod? Like some big ape with just one leg. Like, what makes you think he's got 2 feet, that he's bipedal? You never see footprints. It's always just one footprint. Makes zero sense. But that's the kind of stuff you're allowed to talk about. You can talk about man, bear, pigs, or chupacabras all day, but you start going outside of those bounds of safe conspiratainment, and now you're dangerous misinformation. And that's where we are. And they try to find different sneaky ways to shut you down. So they'll say, well, your information is endangering people. This is why I always make a point to say, and this is just right now, just anyone who's listening from the WHO, any of these paid provocateur troll agents from YouTube, this channel is pro-vax. We're so pro-vax that it's not safe to sit next to any one of us on a bus. We want to vax everybody. However, we think it's important that we vax the essential members of the media, celebrity athletes, politicians, Antifas, and I think that would cover it. And, even if we do have extra vaxes, I kind of think we ought to deny vaccinations to anybody who's ever spread a negative meme about Bill Gates, or anybody who's, in fact, you might as well deny flat earthers the vax until we vaxed all the precious globe earthers first. So there you go. We're pro-vax. You know who I want to see vaxxed is vax Jack Dorsey, vax Mark Zuckerberg, vax Bill Gates. I've never seen Bill Gates in a mask. Now, I haven't figured out how Bill Gates' wife, Melinda, can both simultaneously resemble two people who don't look like one another. It's a strange thing. It's a conundrum. You know, if A equals B and A equals C, then B should equal C, correct? Well, Melinda Gates looks like Robin Williams. Melinda Gates looks like Kevin Kline. But Kevin Kline doesn't look like Robin Williams. It doesn't compute. Lloyd Miller says BLM's got to be vaxxed. You know, it's kind of messed up you say that. Because Melinda Gates actually said that. She said that they want to vax blacks first. And I'm like, wait a minute. Is she not married to the guy whose father was part of the American Eugenics Society that basically wanted to kill off all racial minorities? And you can look it up for yourself. I'm not going to repeat their rhetoric, that eugenics stuff, but nothing's changed. Now they have other more subtle ways of saying what they really mean. Their little technocrat dog whistles about cutting your carbon footprint in half. Oh, I get it. Like the mask, come on. They've been taxing you for the air that you breathe. We know what the mask is really for. Commenter says, fake book burning books. Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're dealing with a massive book burning right now. We're living in a conflagration. You know, we get out of Fahrenheit 451. This is Brave New World, 1984. Actually, there's a line in 1984 where it talks about no fun, no dancing, no gatherings. It was like an actual quote. And I'm like, it sounds exactly like it. Like, it's too bad. I mean, it's literally not a warning. It's literally it's a prophecy, and I don't know, because there's no way out. If you actually read 1984, there isn't actually any way out. You have to accept that your senses aren't adequate to deal with reality, because your senses are wrong. Tells you he has 4 fingers up, but he tells you it's 5. Okay, let me see what else we have here. Lloyd Miller says there's strong proof the whole thing is the opposite of what they say. They are the racists. Well, for the one I want to point out, systemic racism is pretty much a hoax. There's really nothing to it. It's a very selective way of looking at things. It's actually a new form of blood libel, if you ask me. This this white guilt premise, white privilege needs to go, because it all assumes something. It assumes that we are all reincarnating intra-racially. Like, we don't know. What if God's a trickster and he switches you, gender and race or something? So it's like, wait, all the BLM could have been reincarnated slave owners and vice versa. So we don't know. And so how can you be held accountable for something that happened to people who look like you superficially? Like, the whole premise is wrong. Reincarnation hasn't been proved. And again, we don't know if reincarnation occurs intra-racially or not. One thing we haven't talked about tonight was the election. And that's because I think most of us here have election fatigue, and we all know how it's going to end. Ocean of Lard says the elites transfer their souls into new cloned bodies. Right. I've heard that. And that's kind of where they're talking about uploading your mind into the cloud, fusing the mind with the cyberspace. There's this movie that came out a couple of years ago. It's called The Beyond, and it dealt with this very topic, and it was on Netflix. I used to watch Netflix just for opposition research, because you can tell the future by watching Netflix. Anyway, here's a movie. It's called The Beyond, 2018 science fiction thriller, and it's about another Earth. And this new Earth just pops up out there through a wormhole. A groundbreaking mission sends robotically enhanced astronauts through a wormhole. But here's what happens. They find there's a wormhole, because again, wormholes are real, if you didn't know. And the wormhole shat out another world, and it looks just like Earth. So like next to the moon, we have another world, but it's blue. It's not dying and cancerous like our Earth. So they're like, oh, look, we can go to that one. It's much nicer. But we can't let anyone up there because we'll screw it up the same way we screwed this one up. So for you to go to the new Earth, which they call Earth 2, you have to have your brain removed and put into a robot body. And apparently it's a better experience. So they have their brains put into robots' bodies so they no longer have a carbon footprint, and then they fly up to this new world. So compare this to transcendence. I mean, I would say transhumanism and the idea of technologically transcending limitations in life, becoming immortal, more or less. You know, to me, this is just a new age religion. And it's not achievable, but it's a new way for them to promise immortality. And you know, carbon taxes has always just been selling of indulgences, like you can buy a better seat in heaven. I've had a few people pointing out the movie Utopia on Amazon is something worth watching if you want to know what's coming. 2018 Netflix became our 2020 reality, and this should be alarming to you because, well, cuties, for one thing. I mean, if you look at some of the garbage on there, you know what's coming. Lloyd Miller says, I watched Utopia recently. Sterilization is the purpose of the vax. Commenter says, what are your thoughts on ley lines? Yeah, that's an interesting topic in itself. You know, are we all just matrix batteries, and is the world set up in such a way to aggregate all of our expended, I guess, energy, our consciousness? And that's why they trigger us. That's why they do psyops. That's why our movies are meant to traumatize us or enrapture us with drama. Probably. Like, this world could in fact be something like a big vampire system. Nunya Business says, I gotta go. It's been fun. Peace. Hey, thanks. And if you want to catch this on the replay, go to infiniteplanesociety.com. Sign up. $1 a month. You get full access to the Discord server, newsletters, live stream notifications, text message notifications. And of course, the Discord server think tank also has an animation department. And so if you haven't heard about it yet, we have a project we started 2 years ago, and we got interrupted by Parkland and Starman and so many other things. But the product itself, the project, was just kind of on the back burners, and it's called South Pole. South Pole is our version, you could say, of a South Park-like kind of crude animation or 2D animation cut out. And the season premiere, season 1, episode 1, will be this Thanksgiving. And it was produced entirely in the Infinite Plane Society's Discord server. We had an animation department opened up, an actual room for it, and it kind of flourished. So now we have voice, music, score, editors, and everything else. So you won't want to miss it. So if you sign up at infiniteplanesociety.com, you'll get to see the premiere, possibly before the Thanksgiving premiere. Lloyd says Utopia is very disgustingly violent. Yeah, it's been a while since I've watched a mainstream movie, and whenever I do, I'm always taken aback at just how much violence I used to just passively accept. And I think it's part of this conditioning, normalizing, and also they want you to have a low opinion of the human race. You know, a lot of entertainment is just, it amounts to slander. They want us to think the human race is a virus that ought to be destroyed for its own good. Mercy, kill the human race, please. Send in a space rock. I mean, look at these games. Grand Theft Auto. Like, you remember games like Super Mario, you save the princess? Now it's Grand Theft Auto, where you shoot up crack, you rip off a prostitute, and then you loot. And then you protest the police departments. One Step Too Far says, we are in a massive chess game, and whether you want to be or not, you can only control what happens within the square you're in at this moment. Well, if you're a pawn. But we are in a massive chess game. But I think we do have this scenario that it's like, yeah, it's a game whether you want to be or not. You're correct. Like, where's the opt-out? It used to be you could just opt out and laugh at stuff. But now No, you got to participate. You got to wear the costume. Well, what if I don't believe in space rocks? Doesn't matter. You got to wear the helmet because space rocks. I don't believe in it. Doesn't matter. Your non-belief and your unwillingness to put on a helmet threatens my life somehow. I mean, that's the argument today. And really, this place can get as stupid as we tolerate. You will live underneath the level of stupidity that you tolerate. Didn't Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Jefferson say that? He might have said tyranny, but it's kind of the same thing because we're being tyrannized by stupidity. Like the inability or the unwillingness to think, to reason, to use logic, to rationally assess things. But things are way too emotionally charged. But I have some really good news. Like the best news of all, because 2020 is being given a lot of flack. A lot of people are always ripping on it. 2020 is the worst year ever, etc. And, you know, by my gauge, mostly Netflix, it's going to get worse. But for all that we have said about 2020, which I do believe is the big reset year, one good thing we can say about it is that there's no pandemic. People aren't dying in those numbers that they say. You know how many articles have come out? Like articles are coming out where people have died of COVID after falling off a ladder. Or that one guy, he had a mask on with a particle filter. He passed out while driving, ran into a telephone pole, died, COVID. Gunshot wounds to the head, COVID. Finbar says, if you're dumb, then quarantine yourself. Yeah, look, I think that the people who believe in this the most are the ones who ought to quarantine themselves. If you believe in it, stay home. Like if I was scared of werewolves, I would never leave home when the moon was full at night, right? But I don't really fear werewolves, so I go where I please. But you have people who are afraid of this plague going around, killing, 6 million people so far? And yet, they still go around. I'm like, well, it's awfully brave of you. You got on a spacesuit because of germs, but you're running around shopping in this germ-infested Walmart. Like, give me a break. These people are a bunch of hypocrites. And since we're not seeing the piles of bodies, the tents were all empty. It was a big decoy op. Hospitals are empty. Commenter says, I lost my job. I see a lot of that, but people, yeah, that's true, I guess. You know, I went to the gym today, and I almost don't want to, I'm almost afraid if I explain this that they'll probably, Big Brother will go shut them down. Anyway, there are loopholes, not loopholes, but there are ways that places can stay open. For example, I don't even want to say it. Kind of like there was this dollar store I used to go to where the employees they would laugh at the whole mask thing, and they would only wear it if some sheep came in. But I didn't want to out them because I was afraid they would all get dragged out, shut down or something. No, but Walmarts are germ infested, and there's nothing you can do to change that. You know, it's like you have people going up the aisle, down the aisle. You can't go back and forth because of germs, right? Or COVIDs. But here's the real reason. Adaptivia says, my gym did the same loophole. Okay, good. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, so the reason why they don't want you shopping in the traditional way where you browse, they want you to go in, walk in a straight line, go through the maze, and exit a different door than you entered. They did that here to us. And the reason why isn't because they're trying to stop you from spreading something. If that were the case, we wouldn't all be using the same keypad when we swipe our cards. I mean, the rest of this grocery store here, they wrap the keypad in saran wrap. So everybody's pushing it. And I look at the saran wrap and it's all crinkled where fingerprints have been all day. I'm like, okay. So you just basically concentrated all of the COVID in one spot and we all get it before we leave? Like, this isn't how you do decontamination. This isn't how you prevent the spread of a biological agent. But the reason why they're doing this is they want to get rid of the shopping experience as you know it. As in, choosing between companies competing for your money. They're trying to get rid of free market competition. Customer service is dead. They're getting rid of that because they're replacing it with this new thing. I mean, it's not a coincidence if you look at all the businesses that have closed. Like what? This wealth transfer. Was it $200 billion went away from small business and went into Jeff Bezos's gullet. That's a major wealth transfer. And we called this day one, back 3/11. We're like, oh yeah, get ready for your communist revolution. COVID is the agent, but it's essentially a massive wealth redistribution and a financial reset. Okay, let me see what else we have here. Rudy says a pub in Scotland dodged the laws by giving free food. Well, we got Thanksgiving coming up in 2 days. So it's like, well, you can only have 6 people over for Thanksgiving, but you can have 24 people at a funeral. So if you hold a funeral for the turkey, there's your loophole. I've been watching these riots and these protests where these lockdown protesters are getting arrested. And really, this is something that occurred to me before. Nearly every single protest movement out there is controlled opposition led. And there's usually an agent provocateur who's going to throw something at the cops so the cops have the justification to beat you up. It happens every time. So I wonder, what is the wisdom of gathering en masse and shouting and getting arrested when you can just go do your own thing? And if everybody spread out and did their own thing, they wouldn't have enough police to contain everybody. But convenient for them, all of the dissidents and the free thinkers concentrate themselves in one small area. Like, I don't know if that's the best tactic. I really don't. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Going through comments, I see somebody put Tim Osman with an S in semicolons. Yes, semicolons are used to denote reptoids. So if you haven't taken the green pill, you all know about the red pill, the blue pill, and some of you half-assed truthers with your purple pills, mixing it. There's the green pill, which nobody wants to talk about. But we'll talk about it. And if you discern someone you suspect might be of reptoid persuasion, and you want to do the courtesy of letting us know, yeah, put their names in semicolons. Okay, so big week ahead this Thanksgiving, release of Season 1, Episode 1 of South Pole. It's a 20-minute cartoon. I think you'll like it. I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but it's if you like our memes, you'll like this. If you like the music on Infinite Plane Radio, you'll like it. Later this month, I'm releasing Conspiratained, a paperback book. It's going to come out on Black Friday, but those of you who joined Patreon this month, who went through conspiratained.com, your copies will be signed and sent out to you. That's happening this week. I want to see if there's anything else. I have quite a lot of interesting developments having to do with this metascript concept, but I don't want to delve into that now. I'm adding up to it. Tim Osman says the green pill is to agree with the Paris Accord. Are you saying the greenies took the green pill? I don't know if we can let them do that. One Step Too Far, who might actually be a sock puppet to Elon Musk, says, Elon is legitimately at war with Bezos. Trust me when I say. Elon's the guy you want to win, because unlike Bezos, he never wanted to own people. Just accidentally created ways that new masters could. Okay, so actually, Lloyd Miller solved the problem. He said reptoids are the greenies. Very good point, because if you wanted to really define what a reptoid is, you're talking about territorial aggression, top-down hierarchical control, hive mind. Yeah, greenies. Greenies are mean. There's an article about this, came out a few years ago, about greener is meaner, about how greenies don't tip. They can justify stealing. They can justify nearly anything. I mean, these are the people who can justify putting down everyone. I mean, they're the ones who always are talking about, we've got to get rid of the human race. It's like, well, you first. Vax yourself first. If vaxes were such a great thing, they wouldn't be trying to give it to you. They'd be hoarding it. Now, if I had to go with Bezos or Musk, and I hate to say this, but I would go with Bezos. And the reason why is that Musk is planning to colonize Mars. Musk wants to have this Mars utopia, which I'm cool with, but Mars could be destroyed by a rock just like the Earth could be. By all indications, Mars was already destroyed by a rock once. It was just as good as Earth. Rock came down, wrecked it. Life on Mars, destroyed. Panspermiated all over the solar system, landed on the Earth, so life may have actually have started on Mars, if you go by that theory. And I heard that from an astronaut on 60 Minutes. And right after he mentioned this, there was a commercial for a TV show called Salvation, a 13-episode series about a space rock coming down to kill us all. But my point is, Musk is going to Mars, but Bezos is like, why would you go to Mars? Why would you want to be confined to a place that could be beset with all of the same problems we have here? His idea is just building massive, cigar-shaped, tubular space stations that can house millions. He's talking about exponentially growing the human species until you have 1 million Mozarts. Like, so Musk is talking about condensing us, create a little sustainable habitat under a dome on Mars, and Bezos is like, let's just go take over the universe. So I'm with Bezos. One step too far, oh shucks, I'm sorry you feel that way, please look into it. Yeah, I'll look into it, but look, if I had to choose, but I'm not choosing between the two. I think that's the whole coercion thing. They want to make you think that the Earth is not worth staying, it's not worth saving, it's not safe, or maybe your carbon footprint is so bad for the Earth that maybe you should just give up and go to Mars. Like you're actually sacrificing yourself, like that movie I brought up, From Beyond. You had to give up your body to go into the heavens, put your brain in a computer, and have it sent to the new world. But when it comes down to it, though, ultimately, and I brought this up earlier, this space utopianism is never meant to deliver. One of the things about utopianism, the main thing they're known for, is not delivering on their promises. And that's ultimately where we're at. And I don't know how they're going to get away with putting people off much longer. I mean, I think Branson had the right idea, Virgin Galactic, where they had somebody blow up in one of his rockets. So it's like, okay, that's going to dampen the enthusiasm for space travel, put his investors off for a little bit of while, a little couple years. You put down money for a ticket, maybe you're not so eager now. I kind of predict a big Mars starship trip, and then it gets hit by a space iceberg, like an asteroid, just like the Titanic all over again, only it's in space. And you have all these celebrities, the Kardashians, all kinds of trendy celebrity athletes getting up on board. I mean, imagine all the people you could put on that thing. Like if you took my vax list, the people I want to vax, that would be my starship list. The people I would like to send on the very first voyage to the Red Planet. Cubstar says, make China Mars again. Do you remember as a kid, like how many of you tried to dig a hold of China? Like you've ever tried? Because I think we all have at some point, and it's probably because you saw something, Looney Tunes, Bugs Bunny or something. Now, the proposition of digging a hold of China, it was actually, this is where space travel, I think, has its genesis. So Lewis Carroll, who gave us Through the Looking Glass, Alice in Wonderland, he posited that you could have a tunnel connecting 2 points on the globe, antipodes, opposite points on the ball, and that you would have this tube where you would free fall, and it would take some time, but you would actually fall, accelerating, and of course they would take the oxygen out of the tube. So you're free falling, frictionless flight, essentially. Accelerating for 21 minutes, decelerating 21 minutes, and then you land on the other side. So it's like, oh look, you went from America to China. Well, this notion kind of figures prominently in Alice in Wonderland. If you remember, she falls down the rabbit hole, and then she lands at the bottom, and then she's in Wonderland where everything is crazy. None of the laws of physics resemble what they did in the real world. Everything was inverted. So that's Lewis Carroll. But then in 1966, a mathematician did some calculations, and he said, yeah, if you could dig a hole through the world, it would take exactly 42 minutes to go in one end and come out the other. So I was talking about Musk and this tunneling, the Boring Company, even the Virgin Galactic getting into it. But what are we talking about here? Fake space travel. And now here we have one of the progenitors of this concept of free falling through frictionless space, and the calculation adds to 42 minutes to go through the Earth. And there's nobody more obsessed with the number 42 than the guy who is also curiously obsessed with digging tunnels and space travel. In fact, when we first started talking about this, I saw a tweet by Musk where he said, embrace tunnels. It'll feel like warp drive. Of course, warp drive. And now connect this to the concept of wormholes, the fictional concept of wormholes. And suddenly it's like, yeah, you get in this little rocket ship here and we'll take you to a wormhole and you'll wind up on this paradise out here. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, now that you're talking about Alex Jones on Joe Rogan, I wondered if you saw the last episode he did with Rogan. There was a guy that was in studio, and the guy that was in studio, I don't know who what his name is, but he had a free Ghislaine shirt on. So you have Alex Jones with his NASA shirt on, and then whoever the guy in studio with him had a free Ghislaine Maxwell shirt on. And so Alex and Joe and this other guy, they all took a picture together, like just laughing, right? It kind of like was just in your face. How Alex will pull all this like this BS that he pulls like with Pizzagate, for instance. Well, he'll kind of go and take you to the truth, and then once you get there, like with Sandy Hook, he'll back up and be like, "Oh, they're all crazy." So it's very interesting how Joe and Alex really are weaved together in this movement, I guess.
I use the term guardrails.
Both seem like in the big.
Yeah, I use the term guardrails, where they take you so far, but they don't take you into the borderline content, but only so far as they're permitted. Like, for example, they'll talk about false flag theory all day long. So you could spend decades studying various shooting events, and you could say, well, no, it was this person. No, it was this person. Maybe it was the psychiatric medication. Well, those are all false flag theories. I mean, it's just blaming a patsy. But in reality, the whole thing could be theater. But they're not allowed to talk about that. I wonder why.
I don't know. It's a really good question. I mean, maybe it's because they're both, playing different characters on the world stage. Maybe it's because Alex is Bill. Today I saw this, it was an alt-right deal. I think the guy's name is Ali, or Ali. He looks like a clone of Sammy Davis Jr. It is unbelievable. I think it is Sammy Davis Jr. I don't know if you know who this guy is.
You talk about
I just saw him today
the tap dancing Satanist with a glass eye, that guy?
Yeah. But this guy's real name is Ali, I think, and he looks just like Sammy Davis. I mean, they're clones. They're the same person. It's very bizarre.
Okay, so you said clones. Okay, because this is a fascinating topic. Somebody earlier tonight brought up the idea of the elite transplanting consciousness into new bodies. And then, strangely enough, maybe you've seen this one. I saw this picture of Barbara Bush, like 10 pictures, compared to pictures of Aleister Crowley, who died in 1947. But I'm like, wait a minute. If he didn't die in 1947...
They look the same, though. They look the same. What about Theresa May being Hitler's daughter? And same thing with Angela Merkel, or whatever her name is.
Oh,
being
Hitler's
Merkel? Daughter. I mean...
Yeah, I mean, look, that's probably true. I'm pretty sure that Trudeau is one of the children of the dictator out there in Cuba, Castro.
Castro?
But did Aleister Crowley put on a wig and then take on the role of Barbara Bush? Like, what a weird turn of events for that guy's life, if that's true.
Well, it is really bizarre. And, plus, okay, you have Ozzy Osbourne who sang a song about Aleister Crowley, right? And it just so happens that Ozzy came to like a deal for the second Bush's presidential, whenever he was in office in 2000s or whatever, and he stood up and he said something about Aleister Crowley. Like, it's just crazy. If you tie it all together, he would actually be praising Bush's grandfather.
That's incredible. Okay, now check this out. There's a video called Straight to Hell that came out in January by Ozzy Osbourne. And I watched the video because I watched it after the riots in Minneapolis, and I'm like, wait, this just predicted all kinds. So the video by Ozzy Osbourne, Straight to Hell, typical Ozzy Osbourne stuff. I wouldn't play it, but it's riots against the police. People are wearing masks. It looks like Chazistan. So this was definitely predictive programming, even down to the masked rioters. But the way it ends, and this is Ozzy Osbourne's latest video from 2020, it ends with a nuke. What do you think of that?
Well, does that mean that we're going to get nuked in December? I mean, what's that mean? You know, here's what is crazy is that we've talked about all the movies with predictive programming, but there are so many music videos that have predictive programming. I'll just throw out one right here. Kanye West came out with a song called Love Lockdown. Love Lockdown, and in the song, he's by himself in his room or in his house by himself, singing about loving lockdown.
Oh, loving lockdown. That's some subliminal
You see what
programming.
I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's a lot that is going on, and the music videos, I think, they kind of got turned off when MTV became more like VH1. You know, MTV used to be music videos all day long, and then like Kurt Cobain died, and they started filming 14-year-olds get pregnant. You know, it totally changed. They quit playing any of the music, and it became news programming or, you know, the Sonic programming, whatever it is.
True,
You know?
true. And
But
now music videos, this is a big one too. You're right, because there's plenty of examples of this, and we've seen it before. I think one of the examples recently this year was Blinding Lights. And this was a song that I became familiar with it because the dancing nurses were all doing the Blinding Lights challenge. So instead of fighting COVID, the nurses are all, as you know, dancing and twerking and just having fun at the empty hospitals. But the Blinding Lights challenge is a reference to the song, which was popular when the lockdown started. It was one of these trending hits during the coronavirus, and it's by The Weeknd. But the video, which came out months before the lockdown, had The Weeknd in Las Vegas.
Nurses?
No, they had him in Vegas, and Vegas was already empty and dark.
Oh my God. Okay, so what is going on? Is it, this is where you get into, like you were talking about earlier, someone brought up like the Saturn Jupiter that's getting ready to happen this 21st or in December. Like maybe there is something with this retro causality. Maybe they have to use they program us through their symbols, and they use our minds to manifest it into reality. It doesn't seem like they have the ability to create anymore. Every time I hear of a new movie coming out, it's like they're redoing an old movie. It's like watching the news. They replay the same script over and over.
It's a cycle, and I think the cycle is. I think this is ultimately what it's about. This cult. And you look at all the symbolism with Saturn, and then you look at the astrotheological nature of it. Like one thing, and this is just undeniable. It is undeniable that George Floyd, who was knelt upon for 846, Twin Cities, that the sun set at 846. And the meaning of this stuff, though, the timing of it, it's all astrologically timed. Even the mainstream news, even these mainstream events. And you cannot separate astrology from magic. And when you look into the theories behind magic, specifically group magical ritual, it kind of begins to resemble a lot of what you see even at concerts. So it kind of brings in the whole entertainment business and what they're really about. Same with the movies. So whatever your thoughts are on magic, the concept as I understand it has to do with basically the part of, or the percentage of reality, I guess, or the ratio of it that is influent, or the like, let's just say reality is a subjective thing, and that we're only we're only inputting like 1%. So it's like human perceivers influence events to some small degree on an individual level.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can get them all in
Also
concert,
focus on one thing.
and
That's right.
And that's the focus of.
So here's the big question. Okay, if everyone would have turned off all their media, turned off the TV and internet in December of last year, would we have COVID right now?
I would say no.
Because the only reason we have this mass hysteria going on, mask hysteria, right, is because the media said that's what the truth is. And so everyone took the download and then they pull it off. Even if people don't believe in it, now you have the corporations that run, they clearly run everything. They want to run all the small businesses out. They want them out of competition, right? So the corporations really control, like, for me, it's like the panic of COVID. Is every time I have to go to the damn store now, I just hate it because I don't wear a mask and everyone around me is wearing the mask. So I always think, if we didn't have corporations, would we have COVID? And I don't think we would, because you wouldn't have the media telling everyone what's going on, and you wouldn't have all these corporations that are pushing these dumb policies with, like, you got to get your temperature checked and you got to wear them. It's just fucking retarded.
Oh yeah, it's infantilizing. It's infantilizing is what it is, right? It's like we're collectively sick and we have to be collectively nannied until we're all collectively better. It's pretty pathetic.
Yeah, and that means that you can collectively, if you're going to try to come to my house and force me to take a vaccine, it's going to cause real issues. And this is where I am trying not to bring this into my reality. Like, I'm trying to avoid this as much as I can, but I'm not the one that's getting ready to push the U.S. troops onto the American civilians and are going to force people to take this vaccine. And it's force or coercion. It's the same thing. If they tell you you can't come here unless you have this shot, and like you said, if it was so good, they would not be giving it to us for free. They would be hoarding it.
Yeah, I kind of have a new theory about it. I mean, this is kind of it's speculation. But, we know the space program, rather, we know what a farce it is. But I found some interesting little correlations here between, for example, the Corona field, Roswell, and then the very first spy satellite system when the space race kicked off, and this was secret for decades, was called Corona. Then you've got Corona Park, Men in Black, where the alien invasion, which had occurred secretly, had its headquarters. So I'm looking at Corona, and now we have the vaccine.
You have Corona and Kobe Bryant. You have Kobe means COVID in Hebrew. So you have that as well. Sorry.
No, that's true. That's this whole thing, actually, when you look at it, the new crown and the nomenclature says there's something else going on here. But when I'm looking at this, I think ultimately it's about a takeover. And the space race, of course, we're not really going to space. I think it's about control. And so here's what I'm getting at. When Putin came out with a vaccine for coronavirus called Sputnik.
Yeah,
I got to
Sputnik,
thinking,
yeah.
Okay, I got to thinking, well, there was a couple of magazines, The Economist, and the cover of The Economist that came out a couple months ago has, as the cover, it says The Aliens Among Us. And it looks like you're looking at outer space on the cover, but it's inner space. So you got the virus, and then you got the little bacterium, and it looks like outer space. Balls, little craft. The bacterium look like little rockets with the little, like the ones that Elon Musk uses. And so I started thinking, well, what if ultimately this is actually about inner space, and that the moon lander was a scaled up injectable nanobot, and that the first Sputnik going into orbit wasn't actually orbiting the world, but it was the first injected
orbiting
probe
in your body.
Yes, and that's the nature of total control, like the crown from the top down. And so I'm like, well, maybe orbit is when they successfully had a traceable little signal going through somebody's body, and that the idea of the worldwide vax called Sputnik is kind of an inside joke because they won the space race, the race to occupy everybody's inner space, and that it's ultimately about injecting us all with an injectable, implantable, whatever it is. But I never really went down that trail before, but I started thinking, what's more likely, that they're actually sending these probes into space, or they're trying to eventually take over inner space. And the space age would require that you go through this process. And you look at the space,
Right.
yeah, the whole space age and the new age, it's actually the same thing. And it's all based on, funnily enough, the precession of the equinoxes. So the space age, even though it's dressed up like science, it's the new age movement.
So it's what we're coming into, according to all these people that follow astrology.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's debates.
And that's the interesting thing about astrology, is that it's the one thing that, like, I was never even taught to, like, really look at, right? Except when I went outside at night and I looked up. You know, you wonder about the stars, but it never made sense to me if someone's going to draw it out, because it did seem so fake. That's why I didn't buy into NASA when I was a kid, because it just didn't seem real. It seemed like another movie to me, you know? Maybe that's why they didn't want anyone to focus on it, because maybe that is part of, like, this manifestation of power comes into, like, the universe, has to do with the stars. You know, then you have Starman that's in space. They kind of, like, tell it to us, or, you know, they say all the elite, they don't pick their nose without looking at the calendar first, you know? Maybe there's something to it then.
Okay, so Starman, here's an interesting one. Starman, David Bowie song. He entered the world stage with this Man Who Fell to Earth character. And you talk about music videos. All of David Bowie's music videos, or all his music for decades, it's kind of coincided with the space program. In fact, Space Oddity was played during the Apollo 11. It was on the BBC. So anyway, Starman, Life on Mars, more of David Bowie stuff. Starman, of course, is the name of the guy in the Tesla Roadster. Well, Starman is an anagram for Mr. Satan. And you remember Mr. Satan fell to Earth. And David Bowie, the Man Who Fell to Earth, Satan fell like lightning. He's got the lightning bolt on his cheek. There's some pretty interesting symbolism with this with the entire space program.
Something's going on, right?
Well, look at the very
like
genesis. Jack Parsons, the American counterpart to Aleister Crowley, hanging out with L. Ron Hubbard, having a three-way relationship with this actress Marjorie Cameron, trying to impregnate her so they could give birth to the Antichrist. I mean, this is the foundation of NASA.
On like what was that, like on a full moon or whatever? They have all these rituals that they do, and then of course you have the space, and then allegedly it was started by, you know, the NASA or the Nazi scientists. Every time I hear Nazi now, I think of NASA because of the guy that you did a couple of interviews with. What's his name?
Probably
Maxwell.
Maxwell, yeah.
Jordan Maxwell. He always talks about, like, we think of NASA, think Nazi, because they were started. But so every time I think of NASA, I think of Nazis. So, you know, it's unbelievable what they're able to do. But the thing is if we figure out that all of their power derives from what we do, if we could take that back, what could we manifest in reality?
Yeah, that's been the attraction of the flat Earth to me. It's just been this idea that, so let's say you're able to really pull back the curtain and expose the big hoaxes, then you would have, I think, an authentic reset. Not their reset where they're pulling us into a dark age where we have no property, no identity, but a real reset where we're no longer framing our existence around non-existent threats. I mean, it's just going to be a few more months until they start saying space junk's a reality, and now you've got to wear a helmet.
They have a rock falling on that guy's house, and he got $33.3 million for it or whatever.
Yeah, what's with that?
Did you hear that story?
Yeah, I was making fun of that story from 1954 in Alabama where a meteor fell through this lady's roof, hit a radio, landed on her
I
hip.
remember you talking about that.
Well, okay, so
and she lived, right? It was amazing.
Well, that was on the 33rd parallel. Someone just emailed me about this. But then the day after we're making fun of this story, for the first time in probably since that event
ever,
they said, they said a piece of meteorite fell through this guy's roof and he went to the bank and he cashed it in for $2 million.
Yeah.
Like, is there a meteor bank? Where do you go to cash that shit in?
Yeah. How did he get that? Yeah. the guys from NASA, they were giving away moon rocks that was petrified wood. So where the hell did this bank was able to verify that this wasn't a piece of petrified wood so quickly? So no one asked these kinds of questions, though. No, no one asked these kinds of questions because it's like space, and I guess it's unbelievable. And if it happens here on Earth, then people just okay, they shake their head, and it is very crazy. Here's what I was thinking about. Okay, so we're sitting we're watching your show on YouTube or D Live, wherever we're at, right? And we're in there as a chat, but none of us are talking. We're all thinking. We're all thinking. Hopefully, you'll read one of our thoughts and read them online, right? So maybe they have.
Hey man, I think you need to loosen your mask a little bit. I appreciate you trying to keep me safe, but your voice is a little bit muffled. It just started.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good now. You're good now. Appreciate it though.
Okay, so maybe what they have the ability to do is to read. They have all these applications. They can read our thoughts in real time. So all a politician would need to do was collect that information, kind of like seems what Trump did with half of the country, and tell everybody what they want to hear. Like Trump said, build a wall. Yeah, everybody in Texas wanted a damn wall, in Arizona, New York, or New Mexico, right? Everybody wanted a wall, and then he like hit on every single subject that people know something's not right. Like the economy is not good. He told everyone the economy was shit and the stock market was a lie. So he told so many truths to get into office, and then of course he goes along with whatever their script is going to be. But maybe they do have the ability. They could just read our thoughts live, and they can tell us what we want to hear. And
you know what?
That's part of what I think. Like,
there's that movie called Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind with Jim Carrey, and they have the ability to selectively remove painful memories so you can get over a relationship or something. And one of the characters in the movie is falling in love with one of the patients that he's extracting memories from. So he actually finds out what her intimate thoughts are, and he uses that to get her to fall in love with him.
Yeah. And I've seen that movie one time. I should go back and rewatch that. But man, that's got to be what they're doing. And see, they tell us all their little tricks. They tell us right out in front, and they put it in all the entertainment. They put all the truth in movies, and all the lies are on TV. And so we live in this world where nothing is real and everything is at the same time. You know what I mean? And
right.
The Earth is probably not flat or round. It's probably in the middle somewhere.
Well, this is where I try not to fall into ambiguity. What I try to suggest is that even though the world stage is demonstrably fallacious and augmented, there is something real behind it. So I don't throw out the real by just assuming it's all fake. Like I don't go full simulation, full matrix. That's going too far because they want us to, I think we have to stay rooted in reality, logic, and facts. And people who hear us talking and we're mentioning things like the Earth being not a ball, they think that we have nothing to do with facts. And it's because they don't know what facts actually are, verifiable facts. So I stray from automatically disbelieving and automatically believing. I think everything, extraordinary claims, has to be treated as potentially fake until proven real. And when you start looking at the news in that way, you find out that, yeah, most of it is fake. But there is something real behind it. And what I'm trying to do is build a coalition, a network of people who are on this side of the green screen. I call this a post-media critique because we're on the outside. And if there's enough of us doing it, I think we might be able to maintain some oasis of sanity, if nothing else.
Yeah, well, imagine if you had the platform that MSM had, or someone like you could get everybody's attention to focus on one thing, what you could create. And that's what they've done with the media. And then it's like all this stuff comes out. Like, I don't see how people believe Fox after 9/11, but a lot of people on the right, Fox wouldn't lie to me. But now they're like, Fox lies because of the election. It's just, It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, it's like,
And
wait,
we don't even have a damn election.
yeah, people. I was like aghast at this. I'm like, wait, it's 2020, and people are just now finding out that Fox News is controlled opposition. I mean, that's insane. Any news agency out
Fox
there.
is Disney. Fox is Disney. It is the same corporation.
Yeah, nobody's
they-
pushing fake UFO invasion more than Fox. I mean, they push all the fake stuff. They may deny global warming, but they believe in UFO invasions. They may, on some areas, you might find them in agreement with you, but no, Fox News will never call a crisis actor a crisis actor.
Yeah, because they hired them. They can't. It's part of their show. I look at now like it's all anything that's on TV, and they're all working for the TV. I think that's like this Kyle Rittenhouse deal. Like I lived in Wisconsin for like 11 years, and so I know Kenosha pretty well. And I'm just like trying to put myself there and like, did that really happen? I mean, I know it was on like cell phone video footage, so it was hard to like say that it was fake, but I don't even know if that deal even took place the way they said it did.
Well,
I would actually bet that it did not take place the way they said it did.
Well, Kenosha was an open set versus closed set in most regards. I mean, you had an actual riot, and I don't think anybody could successfully argue that the people there burning the cars, the people engaging in the riotous behavior, were all actors. That's the stretch of calling.
That's not believable, right?
It's not, but
Well, it was Kyle.
Right. Was Kyle an instigator? Was he sent? Was
he an actor?
Sent out there, or was that a staged event in the middle of a real riot, or were we looking at a massive production? And I hadn't considered that until Trump shows up with a $42 million check. It's like $42 million. You could probably pay us.
Who did he give $42 million to?
He gave it to Kenosha because some cars got their window.
So he gave it to Paul Ryan because that's where he's from. I don't know if you know that, but that's where Paul Ryan's from. And Paul Ryan used to be Speaker of the House.
Well, I just think
before the Pope told John Boner to step down.
Okay, give me.
So it's all connected.
Give me $4.2 million. I'm sorry, $42 million. $42 million.
Yeah.
And you could produce.
And what could you do?
A Batman style movie with big gangs roving the streets. You could actually. Here's what has been suggested to me, is that you would have a scale model creation where you would actually create 2 blocks of downtown Kenosha inside of a movie studio, and you would have action recorded there, and then you would have it superimposed. So I can see how it might be feasible or theoretically possible, but I won't know for sure until we are able to see if Gage Grosskreuz's arm is still missing a bicep.
Yeah, if he comes back and yeah, exactly. He plays some different character. It's very fascinating, the whole subject of the media and the lies, because even though we all know that COVID it's not what they said it was. It never was. It still is part of our reality now. So whether I believe it or not, I still walk outside and 98% of the people I'm around are masked up. Even though I know it's not real. Even though the doctors will tell you the mask doesn't. I don't understand how you break through that mind control.
Well, here's the thing we have.
Because here I want to give some really good advice for this Thanksgiving. Don't talk about 9/11. Don't talk about Sandy Hook. Don't talk about the earth being flat. And don't talk about COVID being fake. If you want to keep the relationships that you have in your family, the way they are. You want to really go in and stir some shit up, talk about 9/11 being fake, or talk about COVID being fake. And, people lose their shit on what they believe is
Look,
true.
I'm optimistic about COVID, though, going away because there's no evidence. I mean, this is the thing. We don't have piles of bodies. The best they can do is grainy footage of people, apparently National Guard in El Paso, loading bodies. But no, the reality doesn't match the model that they've given us. And it's not going to match. A Kung flu, the Wuhan flu, where it was knocking people on the ground, that hasn't returned. and it's not going to return. So the fear is not going to return. So I think that COVID-19 jumped the shark. When Donald Trump cured himself in 3 days, it ceased to exist for
What
most
the hell?
people. Right.
Which is really ridiculous because there have been people that have gone into the hospital that have been sick since this has happened, and they didn't have COVID, but the hospitals treat everyone like they have it. So those people have been they've been misdiagnosed by the medical community, and their health has been put into jeopardy by doctors that think they're doing the right thing. So it's a very evil deal that's going on. That's why, I don't understand how people are so pro-Trump. It's like being pro-Bush during the 9/11 attacks. I just don't understand how people can be like, yeah, we gotta have Trump
actually,
or we're gonna get Biden.
I would argue that, Trump has already called the thing a hoax once. Trump resisted putting on the mask, and he never kneeled. George Bush would have kneeled. If we had Mitt Romney, he would have been kneeling and crying.
He would.
So no, I don't think you can really compare the two. But
okay,
but
he still did capitulate and put the mask on.
He did when
Trump
it was
still.
No, the thing is, he did it when it was strategically necessary. But the fact that he made a mockery out of COVID. But again, I think the cat's out of the bag. This is a partisan hoax, and nobody is really scared of it. Like, when is the last time you saw somebody with fear in their eyes when they have their masks? Like, when you see somebody out there in the public, have you ever saw someone who thought this person actually thinks they might actually die of COVID today?
Maybe in the very beginning with older people, I'm just maybe. But today with people with their mask on, I just don't even see them as a person. I can't see them total because I can't see their face. It's really dehumanizing. It makes me want to talk less to someone that's covering their mouth. I went into Bass Pro a couple weeks ago in Kansas City, and I was the only one in the store that did not have a mask on. And I am checking every time I go in the store. It's like anytime I go into the store, I'm counting to see how many people are not going along, right? And you have all these salesmen there, and like you said tonight, they want to kill all commerce. They want to take away any incentive to sell. They want it all to be controlled by a few.
Hey, did you hear what Bill Gates said the other day? Bill Gates was talking about masks, and I was really kind of appalled at this. He said about people who don't wear masks. He was on a podcast. He said, "Well, we ask you to wear pants. What are you, like nudists?" And I'd like, wait, so the face is now an obscenity? Showing your mouth is the equivalent of dropping your pants to Bill Gates? Apparently, the human face is an obscenity to that man.
Yeah, and like someone brought up, I think it might have been in your chat or one of your shows, that how many pictures do we have of Bill Gates wearing a mask? None. It's like there was that big party for Joe Biden or whatever, and there were tons of people in that room, and not one person I saw in that video had a mask on. And so they're like coming out and doing it in front of us. What I just want to figure out how to do, I'm not nervous about the virus, but I am nervous about the overreach of our government. And I just feel like once they have us in this snare, man, you're going to have to lose an arm to get out of it.
Oh, well, it's already, well, look, here's what's going to happen. I can pretty much guarantee this is going to happen. You had the war on terror. It wore out after 19 years. ISIS went home. They gave their uniforms to Antifa. So this is the new universal, ubiquitous terrorist threat. It's just 19 years more of the same. You could probably just not watch the news, and aside from the masks, you won't notice it. The masks in post 3/11 2020, because 3/11 was the new 9/11. The mask is just the equivalent of the flag waving. Right after the terrorist attacks of 9/11, everybody had flag bumper stickers. Everybody was waving flags except for the people who were on the left against Bush, siding with the terrorists. Well, now the situation's reversed. The people who don't wear the masks are siding with the COVID.
Are the terrorists.
So I'm saying it's the same. Crazy. It's the same thing. And so you notice that the spell of 9/11 wore off within a couple of years. 3/11, this is going to wear off. So I'm looking past this.
you should check out this Saturn Jupiter deal that's getting ready to happen next month. The only reason I say that is because you're like, well, the 9/11 lasted for 20 years. Some of the people that I've been listening to about the 12/21 event is that whatever they're going to do is it's gonna like dictate the next 2 decades of our reality.
Well, look,
And I don't know if people can do this for 19 years.
they can.
I don't-
Look, I remember Alex Jones throwing a fit about going to the TSA and having TSA agents groping him. Well, now that's the normal. Last time I flew,
Well, fair enough. Just because it's normal doesn't mean it's natural.
no, it doesn't. But no, but
And-
the new normal is irreversible because we can no more go into a pre 9/11 world than we can go back to a pre. I mean, we can't. It's just like it's post 9/11. Now it's post 3/11. You can't go back and remove these things. You just have to wait 19 years. And I think they do these things because it's for the next generation. Like I was talking on YouTube, there's some person, I believe you'd call him a millennial, who said about 9/11, oh yeah, 9/11, isn't that when Osama bin Laden died, or didn't he die in the first plane? Because she heard about SEAL Team 6. And I'm like, no, that's not the
I
story.
have no idea.
So it's like they had to reboot the terror, the terrorist for the next 20
terror
years.
card?
But, yeah, the terror card, but it wasn't going to be an Allah Akbar. Now it's an Achu. Now the sneeze is the threat, and it's universal because everybody sneezes. It's not just confined to one ethnic group or one religious group. So this is actually like 9/11 on steroids. It's a universal 9/11.
Yeah, and it's a war against us. It's a war against you and your CO2 emission and cover your face. It's a war on us. And the worst part about it is if you have kids, because you see all the little kids in the mask, it's insanity. It doesn't make any sense. And the teachers, I don't want to talk bad about teachers. I know you got some teachers that are listening to the call right now that are in a bad spot. They don't want to go along with it, but they feel like they have to. But I just have a feeling if we don't stand up and all say no, or a majority of us say no, then this could get way out of hand. And it could be, just like Minority Report, where they can, we're going to stop you from doing a crime before you sneeze,
Well, they already are.
It's just
they're getting rid of information that they don't want people to encounter because it'll lead you into thought crimes. This is just a new religion. That's the truth of it, and it can get worse.
So who's their God then? Who's their God? If this is their religion, who's their God?
Good question. I would define it like this: the God who's very angry with us for polluting is the globe. The devil is COVID. Virus is sin. Space is heaven. So it's basically
And their savior is
the savior.
vaccines.
The vaccine is the holy sacrament, and of course, the savior is the church of government. The media is the state church. That's the pundits are the priests. The Bible is the MSM. The mythos, the mythology, that was all given to you through the scientism. But the God itself isn't really an entity. It's the construct of the collective. It's the state.
Even though you're really good at like breaking this down, and hopefully there will be a day where this will be a thing where we go back and we look at all the media, the dying dinosaur of the media, what they did to our country. And like, you'll be one of the first that can say, well, we came up with this idea of critiquing the media after it was gone. We just started doing it beforehand. What I just want to know is like, how do we stop it from like, I don't know. I mean, with 9/11, I just chose not to fly anymore. Like if I don't want to get grilled by TSA, then I'll drive to Chicago rather than fly. This one isn't that easy just to get out of, I don't think.
Right. That's the whole thing. As long as you have choice, you're still free. I'm looking at I think that what we're looking at is a kind of a coercive thing to move us into a new way of life, this whole reset thing, and it's working. Remember last year, a year and a half ago, whatever, Greta was talking about how we had ruined the world and we shouldn't fly home for Thanksgiving or Christmas, and that she took a rowboat to the UN. Yeah, look, they accomplished that with
And
COVID.
then right after COVID happened,
I saw all these people on D Live going, "Oh wow, look at the pollution in China now since they've been shut down for 2 months. It's so clear." And so people just like jumped on that idea right away that, oh, this is not only good for humanity to be locked down, but it was good for the environment.
No, look, I
So it
called it.
is all tied
Yeah,
together.
RT called this out back in March. They said, "Hey, look, COVID-19 is doing Greta's work," and all the environmentalists knew this, but they were quiet about it. They only recently started openly saying, "Hey, now that we conveniently shut down capitalism, let's go green." It's just how convenient, right?
It's crazy. And it's like they have all kind of come out and shown their true colors. Like, you have Canada's prime minister. He come out straight up and said, this is a good thing for the Agenda 2030 plan that we have scheduled. We've been able to kind of move things in a faster direction. So I do think COVID was like it propelled them to push their new world onto us. It seems like.
Yeah, well, hey, in my opinion,
people went with it.
in my opinion, 2020 was scheduled to be a reset year. A global emergency was going to be needed, a global 9/11. And personally, I think this was planned at least as far back as 1906. And I have many reasons to support this.
Can I bring up the Bible into this real quick?
Sure.
Just real quick. Okay, so David, the king of Israel, in the Bible, God told David not to do a census of the Israelis. He said, "Do not count them. I don't want them counted." And he went ahead and did it. So God came to him and said, "All right, they're either going to have pestilence or you're going to have to pick out a whole bunch of people that are going to die." And so he made David choose, and his choice was a virus. So, 2020, they did a census. Right when the lockdown happened, the census was like just starting, right? They had everybody in their house to do a census. And what did we get from it? We didn't get a war, across the sea. It looks like we're going to get a damn virus and we're going to get a war with it. And it's done to us. So there are all these correlations.
Did the census come to your house?
Yeah, they did, and I did not. I saw him pull up. I pulled up at my house as he was leaving, and so I just sat in my car until he walked away.
They came to
and
my
I
house.
did not know who it was at the time, but it was the census.
I had one come to my door, and I opened the door at crack, and I'm like, she said she was at the census, and I said, "Oh, I've got COVID, so later," and I closed the door.
She left
yeah.
right away.
I pulled the COVID card. Like, that's kind of a messed up thing too. It's like, you had to pass a drug test to get into work, and so it's like, well, how many gallons of cranberry juice? How many miles do I have to run to pass the drug test to get the work at the department store? But now it's like you have to pass a COVID test, and pot is legal. So it's like I would rather take a pot test than a COVID test.
You said tonight a way to get around like the Thanksgiving dinner is to act like you're having a funeral for the turkey, which I thought was hilarious, man. Rolling when you said that. So I thought that's pretty funny. But you talked about Alex Jones. I had to point out that, even though I know a lot of people listen to him, if you could like see past that facade, it's all bullshit. Him going in there and talking to Joe Rogan and then sitting next to the guy that has a Free Ghislaine shirt on, that doesn't make sense if you're paying attention to it.
Right. Well, it's kind of it's hard to say where people are coming from, but if you have a pretty good idea that somebody is inauthentic, as in it's a world stage character, a construct, there's no reason to take what they say seriously, but it is important, I think, to study what's being said so you know what the sheep will believe. So if you want to know what mainstream conspiracy theorists think, you actually have to listen to him, and that's the reason why I do.
Well, and for me, like, I know people that watch the news because they say, well, I want to know what everyone else is thinking. And I'm like, man, you're wasting so much time. I just go to Drudge Report and just read the article, his highlighted articles. And that's what I know people believe.
Well, that
saves me a lot of time.
The thing with Drudge, though, is he flipped blue and went far left. And so now it's like the Huffington Post.
He did.
So if you want to actually keep up with where that line of thinking is, you actually have to go to the real-time Twitter sphere breaking news feeds from people like Newsmax and OANN. because yeah, you're not going to really get a grip on it with Drudge. I mean, I don't know what they did to that guy, because he was the one.
They killed him. He was like all about Trump, man.
Well, yeah, he was the one who broke.
Kill him.
Well, he broke the story with Monica Lewinsky, and he started this. In fact,
Yeah.
you were talking about what do we do, to break the big spell. Well, that's what Drudge was doing. Early on, Drudge was involved
Definitely.
in this email news chains, and the news media tried to cover up the story about Monica Lewinsky, and they didn't think that this one guy with an email chain would be able to break it, and he did. And
From CBS, yeah.
so they've been.
And then if you go back and look at like if you go back and look at Trump's first couple months in office, like they had reporters that were taking pictures of, Trump's team huddled around, and like you could see that they were looking at the Drudge report. So something did happen to Drudge. Like that, they wasn't totally CNN, like way off than what it was a couple years ago.
Right. Well,
Good question.
I always thought it was a decent news aggregator, but I have better on my own. I mean, there's really no one source, and that's the whole problem here, is thinking that you can just have one trusted news source. Like, that's kind of a joke. That's where they're trying to get people back into that frame of mind, that you need a trusted news source. Like, I see people saying, hey, you can't trust Zuckerberg or Dorsey, so go to Parler. Well, Parler is a right-wing echo chamber, and even if you agree with them politically because you hate the commies, well, these right-wing echo chambers don't know about crisis actors. They don't know about fake science. They're just as spellbound as the loonies on the left.
I voted for Trump the first in 2016, but this year I had to just say I'm not going to vote, because then maybe their magic won't work on me. You know what I mean? But probably it's not going to work out that way.
I know what you mean. Yeah, you don't want to give your consent. And look, that is a vote.
That's right.
Not voting is a vote.
That's right. Yeah.
So I got a question for you.
That's what I had to do this year, but
would you bet on it?
Yeah, go ahead.
So let's say we're placing.
Would I bet on it?
Yeah, we're placing a bet right now. All of the money in your account right now has to go on one or the other. No equivocating. You have to decide right now who is going to be the president as of December 15th.
It's Trump all the way. And there's a couple things. I heard that Netanyahu did not call Joe Biden to congratulate him on winning the election. And then someone said tonight, I think in your stream, that Facebook took Joe Biden's the elected president it just went back to where he's just a politician. So they took something off of his headline.
Yeah, that's
someone pointed
true.
out
That's
tonight.
true. They changed
so
it
I
from.
think it's definitely Trump.
Yeah, president-elect was his status, and they changed it to. And
politician.
Okay. See, that's what I'm doing too. I mean, I'm guessing that they're so cynical that they want to make sure that the left and the right hate each other so much that we never agree to take off the mask, because it's super politicized. So one way to keep us divided so they can maintain this level of control is they have to make sure we hate each other's guts and we think that the other side is illegitimate. So they know that they stole the election fair and square, and Trump's going to get it back because RGB died. It's that simple. And there's going to be wailing, gnashing of teeth, and who knows what else. But all it's just going to do is it's just going to create a new wave of, hate. Kind of, you thought they hated Bush. They're going to hate Trump way more than they hated Bush, plus as much as they hate Trump.
Well, and think about this too. If it played out where they stole it from the right, man, the right just works. We go to work and we don't riot and we don't loot. So they need that energy in the media. So the Trump card is it works way better than the Biden card. Because even if they gave it to Biden, you'd have people that would be pissed, but not like the left is going to go insane when they take it away from him after he stole it.
Hey, I hate to play.
They're going to go nuts.
I hate to play devil's advocate for Biden, but because I know a lot of Biden supporters and voters. There's probably a few of my.
I don't know one.
It's
weird.
I just relative. Well, I know a few. I don't want to out them, but I do know a couple. And here's the thing. I've seen the Biden videos. The main argument against Biden that I hear is that his son has a laptop and Biden sniffs children. So I'm looking at these pictures and videos of Biden, and it could just be this. It could just be that they're saying, hey, we need you to act more like a human and act like you're a loving grandfather. This is the archetype we're using for you. So can you at least act like these are your grandchildren? And maybe you just take those photos out of context and it looks creepy, but maybe it's just photo ops. What do you think?
Well, maybe he's blind, and the only way that he can see is with his nose. So that would make sense. Like if it was one of his grandchildren, he'd be able to smell their hair, their scent, to be able to detect which one was his and not. So maybe that's all that's wrong with Biden is he's blind. And
Well,
he
look,
uses his nose to see.
Occam's razor, though. What's more likely, one of our explanations, or he's a vampire, baby-eating pedovore and can't control himself? Like, which one's more likely?
I'd take B. I'll go with option B on that one.
Well,
He
yeah.
probably does do all of those things and much more. Actually, I don't even believe there is a Joe Biden.
Well, there
I
is
think
a
it's
Joe.
another construct.
There is a. Well, here's an interesting fact. Okay, so Joe Biden ran for president 33 years ago, and he cheated. He copied on his speeches, and he dropped out. He ran again 13 years ago. So now that in itself is kind of interesting because I was talking about symbolism earlier today and how, like George Floyd, 9/11, all these various events and the numbers. And I was suggesting that the number 46 that we keep seeing with these apparent, highly charged killings, assassinations, it could mean that it could reference this killing of a king ritual. 33 is the king, 13 is death. 46 is 13 and 33. And I keep seeing these numbers paired like that, like Jeff Bezos earned 33 billion after the COVID first month, and then 13 billion right after. I see these numbers in pairs, and I see that with Joe Biden. And one more thing about Joe Biden, it's because he would be number 46.
Didn't they give him the number 46 during like the congressional baseball game or whatever?
Years and years and years ago.
I think he was like, yep.
And what's more,
What else?
He would be the second Catholic president following JFK.
Oh, interesting. Do you know that JFK was killed on Elm Street? And that makes me think of Nightmare on Elm Street. Look at all they've done.
Yeah, I've heard that. The JFK death scene is just something to take apart in itself.
Crazy.
It's a big ritual.
Oh, man.
I don't even think he's dead, to be honest. I don't think that JFK died that day.
I don't either. Well, look at the picture with his wife that day. Like, she didn't have any blood on any of her clothing. I mean, she might have had a little blood on, like, her dress or whatever. But not like if you were sitting in a car with someone and their head exploded.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
it didn't happen.
I don't know. I wasn't sure because I don't know if that film would give you that quality. But the fact is, like, a lot of people assume that there's no way it could have been faked because everybody was watching, which isn't actually true. The Zapruder film wasn't even aired for 12 years.
That's right. And it's just like saying that COVID couldn't be fake because everyone knows it comes from the MSM. That's as much bullshit as that last statement was. Like, what do you mean?
Oh, yeah, they'll say that. They'll say there's no way you could fake this because how many people would be in the know? And it's like, well, I guess there's no way you could fake Santa Claus because all these people would have to be in on it.
It's very interesting. I mean, we live in one wild era, and I just wonder what they're going to try to pull off in the next month or so to maybe they've already done it. Maybe they did 8 months of damage. 8 months of their programming is going to cause decades of change in our country, which is very powerful. So it's like I thought the MSM was losing their grip when Trump won, we're starting to win, but they have more power today than they've ever had, I believe.
I don't think so. I honestly think that as of 2012 and the release of the crisis actor reality to the public, that's a game changer. We are far more informed than people who spent 30 or 40 years debunking the moon landing and investigating JFK. The fact that we're able to actually analyze the media from this perspective shows that we're in a much better position. And the fact that there is no pandemic means that 2020 isn't even a millionth as bad as they said it was.
Well, I think that's a good point. And maybe this is like the beast, like, you know, like it's almost dead and it's like fighting its last round. Maybe this is the last round. Because I really thought the media was done after the 2016 election. You know, so maybe like this is their last fight to stay in power. I don't know.
Well, I think the problem here, though,
I just see all the masks around me, and it's like all the masks. I always just ask myself, if we didn't have the media, would we have COVID? If we didn't have corporations, would there be a pandemic right now?
well, we can't.
And I don't
we
think
can't.
there would be.
We can't act like we just recently, though, acquiesced to this type of tyranny, because we've all been paying taxes. We've all been paying compulsory taxes for bullshit. We've all been paying for carbon taxes, and so we've all kind of given in to this to some extent. And I think, if nothing else, you could look at the mask as a positive thing, because now you have a physical reminder that you've been correct in your assessments and that this is just a naked power grab. And now we have something we can point at. It's no longer a vague conspiracy theory; it's a conspiracy fact. 2020.
Yeah, it's a reality.
Clear vision. Yeah, exactly.
You know, it is. It is a reality. And going to the taxes, I have a buddy, and his son laughs every time I talk about fishing. I'll talk about not having a fishing license. And he's like, man, whoever got you all to buy a fishing license to go fishing, they must be laughing so hard at you right now. And I'm like, damn, they did get us, didn't they? They got us to buy in. So.
Well, Well, anyway, I'm not really like. I don't mean to sound optimistic here, but I don't think things are
It's good that you're optimistic.
Look, there's no space rocks. There's no COVIDs. That's a big deal. There's no alien invasion. Like if you make a list of the things that you're supposed to fear that don't exist, then what's really the problem here? I think that most of it is just mind war more than anything, and even like all the
unknown.
All the doomsayers, as far as I'm concerned, have jumped the shark. I remember back in right before April Fool's Day, a certain doomsayer was saying they're going to shut off the internet. You're going to look out your window. There's going to be Chinese tanks, and out come the UN soldiers with needles to vaccinate you. It's like they have all these scary stories run for the hills. It never happens. So I have this chart here. On the left is ammo. On the right is popcorn. And if you're veering towards the left, then you're probably mind controlled and you're experiencing MK Ultra like effects. You're traumatized. If you're reaching for the popcorn, well, then maybe you're not triggered so much, and you might even be enjoying the show as you critique it.
I know, and it's really healthy, I think, if we could look at it and laugh like that, right? Instead of buying into the trauma that they want everyone to buy into. I'm having a really hard time figuring out why the military, and I've said this on your show, is going to distribute a vaccine. That one blows my fucking mind, and I cannot wrap my head around how that seems. That doesn't seem like that is a really good fit.
Right. I almost think it's a hilarious joke, because personally, because I was in the military and I've observed, and we've all observed, how inefficient government is. And if the government was tasked with getting every single person to do anything, vote or distribute MREs, I don't think they could do it in 24 hours. And the idea that our military could get 300 million vaccines distributed in 24 hours, it's laughable.
That's bullshit.
I don't think it's even...
I agree. But if they come to your neighborhood, it's a different story.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
I don't want to give them any ideas, but here's how I would do it. If I was at the top of the Illuminati dung heap, I would say, hey, look, they're all up in arms about, they've been waiting for this, let's just do this. Give them their universal basic income, but only if they take the pokey. And they'll do it.
Fair enough.
People will do it. People will do
That'll
it.
get rid of a lot of competition.
$1,200. People will get the needle. I guarantee it. People donate plasma and blood.
You're right,
for
man.
$50 for, yeah. So I'm not worried
You're
about
right.
it. Nothing
they will do it.
All right. Well, hey.
That does got to put me a little bit to ease, honestly, because I don't want to fucking hand out.
Well,
You know,
we
and I don't want your vaccine.
we also know nukes are fake, but you do need to know that the DHS is drilling. They're doing drills right now for EMP.
Yeah, what the hell? What is going on?
So they may actually end up
What?
shutting off the power in Portland or maybe even the whole state of Oregon and possibly Seattle,
The East Coast.
but there's no radioactive fallout. So I mean, I don't think that the Psy War is going to end. I don't think this carnival ride stops. I think the world stage is best understood as being a world, WHIRLED. And that's what the globe is. When, the spinning ball always moving through space, it lends itself towards nihilism and moral relativism. Nothing is forever.
It's
Everything
very
is
chaotic.
precisely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Well, hey man, you do an awesome job in breaking all this down, and I had to call.
Yeah, hey, make
So-
sure you check in with us on Thanksgiving. Because this is one of our answers to this thing. We've in the think tank, we produced a cartoon, a pilot. We're going to do it probably every week. It's called South Pole, and we put all of our most offensive, dangerous misinformation memes into this thing, and we're going to premiere it on Thanksgiving.
It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be so funny, dude. I told so many people about your program, so
Hey, I appreciate
I'm
it very
sure
much.
some of them are listening.
And tell them,
So yeah,
tell people too. Infinite Plane Radio on everything, literally. Shop Spotify, iTunes. It just makes it easy. If you just search Infinite Plane Radio, everybody has Spotify. I
it's
think.
all right there.
Yep, exactly.
Nice. Well, keep it up, man. You do an awesome job. Thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate the call very much. Have a great night. All right, let's see. Let me go ahead and comments. Posel says, stock up on flashlights. I think you missed a vowel there. Yeah, look, stock up on, well, what would you stock up on? People stock up on the worst things. Like here, they clear out the bread and the TP. They clear out these things. They get triggered. And I think that's part of the mind game here too, though, is seeing people going into panic. So then even if, like, you remember this, I don't think any of you were panic buyers, but then the panic buyers put you in a position of, well, I have to also go through everything as well. I have to eat and I have to get these supplies. So I have to not panic buy, but I'm buying in response to the panic buys. So you're sort of like it's like you have a bunch of sheep, and if you just stand there, you're going to get trampled. So you're kind of forced to go with it. And so that's where most people are. They have to go with the flow. But there's one other option, and this is the one they hide, and this is the one that we're about. You jump over the guardrails. If you can jump over Alex Jones or any of these guardrailers, if you get over their false explanations that keep you in the state of panic with the sheep, if you're able to jump over that guardrail, then you can just, like we do, just coolly and, it's entertaining, but you just kind of coolly and calmly parse the facts of reality. Romulus 32 says, if there's no power and no internet, the spell's broken for mind control. How come they don't just put the vax in the chemtrails? I was wondering about that. Just put the vax in the chemtrail juice one of these days. Why does it have to be in this particular manner? And that's actually one of the reasons why I think there's nothing in it. And even if there is nothing in it, I mean, look, fear is not only the mind killer, but some guy got a placebo of a vaccine and died. So, but I think it's ultimately about politics. The vaccine is a political instrument. It's not a real medical cure. That's not what we're really talking about. It's a political decision. Do you let Big Brother cross your border? That's why it's so divided. Left wing is like, yes, vaccinate us all, open the borders. It's the same thing. It's about borders, national and individual. And are you going to let your government violate those borders? It's a security thing. When they toy with the idea of invasion, of not securing your borders, that creates xenophobia, so you vote for the Trump. When one side is terrified of the virus, the other side is terrified of the needle itself or the cure, you have a perfect division here that can't be reconciled. I mean, it's been really a win for the propagandists, for the most part, to be able to completely put the conspiracy theories on the right. Even though the most paranoid and ridiculous conspiracy theories are on the left, but they're not called conspiracy theories. So just to remind you really quick, 3 conspiracy theories that you should be aware of, because these are like the 3 platforms of President Biden's thing. Climate change, conspiracy theory. Pandemic model, conspiracy theory. Systemic racism, conspiracy theory. But those are left-wing conspiracy theories. Marve says, what's the difference between a microwave cell tower and a microwave death tower? I have a 5G tower outside of my window here, and there's a thriving community of pigeons. So until I see like rotisserie pigeons, or until something happens to make me think that that tower is, toxic or dangerous, I'm not going to worry. Those pigeons are the canary in the coal mine. Flat earthers are the canary in the coal mine here. I mean, that's how you know. As long as you can say the earth is flat and they're not locking you up, you're still okay. They're getting close, but they still have to associate you with dangerous misinformation, and the only way they can make the case that it's dangerous is if they attach it to medical. This is medical misinformation. Okay, I'm going through comments here. See if there's anything else. Yeah, make sure you're here for Thanksgiving. Please, Thanksgiving is going to be the debut of South Pole. I'm not going to give you any spoilers whatsoever. No spoilers, but it's basically 20 minutes, and the concept of South Pole is, how aliens in fiction are kind of mute, and they're observers just watching us fuck up, waiting for us to shake off the ape so we can evolve and become more like them. I mean, that's what aliens are, by the way. It's a ploy. They've replaced angels for the atheists, and it gives them hope in evolution. Oh, we went from beast, but we can go to this faceless, genderless, immortal, perfected, technologically advanced being. And they see that as the ideal, and we're kind of strung between the two. But aliens are observers, and they're above humans. They're above the fray. That's the whole idea behind them. That's why they're always so judgy. Why do you think they come here to wreck stuff? It's to punish us. So the concept with South Pole is the penguins are on the outside observing in, and as a superior species with total surveillance. Because if the earth is flat, as it is in South Pole in this cartoon, they're on the outer edge, which of course is analogous to being like the aliens on the outside looking in. But it's animated. It should be funny, if not offensive, to most of you. And it's meant to be. And not only that, but it contains some of the most offensive and dangerous memes out there. Things that would get me kicked off this channel. If I just said them plainly. But this is our test. Can we use conspiratainment as a cover for delivering, hard truths? Kevin Defoe says, Thanksgiving, have a funeral for your turkey. Absolutely. Big funerals. Give it a good send-off. Okay, thanks everyone for joining. If you're not on the email list, go to infiniteplainsociety.com. Get on the email newsletter. I'll keep you abreast of everything that's happening, and we're always the first ones to break the news on anything. So if they fake a nuke, they fake an EMP, alien invasion, Godzilla, you're going to hear it from us first. All right, this is Bravo Eddie Bravo, Flat Earth Rock and Roll by Chief Crow and the Flat Earthworms. Have a great night.
I worry about you, Eddie. I really do.
You don't need to, man. I'm fucking better than ever.
I know
dude.
you're
have
doing
no
great,
idea.
but I worry about you going down these rabbit holes of thought.
What's the big deal? Who cares if the Earth is round or flat? It's entertaining to me. I went full flat Earth on it. You went That's got to be some kind of CIA psyop.
Why do you think that's fake?
That's fake as fuck. If that's real to you, man,
You don't...
Tyrannosaurus Rex is a giant kangaroo. That's what it is. You're on a ball, you're nowhere. Don't try to go anywhere, just stay there and work. Oh, hell no. Somebody figured it out. Oh, some scientist figured it out. I'm like, everybody's not Catholic? I thought everybody was Catholic. What's a Jew? Radio has been used as propaganda. You could believe that shit. You want to believe that shit? Good luck. I am.
You just apply this to everything.
Dinosaurs are for kids. Radio, TV, and the movies have always been about propaganda. Listen into it. Listen.
Yo, Sparrow Show.
So you think we went to the moon?
That's not what I asked you.
Telecommunication satellite.
You don't think satellites are real?
I don't think so. If you look into the experiments to prove that the Earth is spinning, all of them failed. Look into it. You guys are fooled by the fisheye lens? Come on, man.